Hi guys, welcome to the War Story podcast. Another year of me needing 5 takes to do the introduction because I still haven't found my way around the technology. But we got here in the end. I'm hoping this can be the last one. Just want to say a massive thank you to all of you who have been listening this year. You know, kind of earlier this year, I made the decision that I was, kind of on the fence about whether or not to carry on the podcast. And the reason I decided to go through it was to equally kind of create an archive for future generations as much as, for fuck's sake, maybe we should do another take. No, you know what? We go on. Alarm clock can wait. What the fuck was that? Yes. What a great way to end the year. So, guys, I wanted to make an archive for future generations as much as having a podcast for, our kind of, to listen to our contemporaries, so to speak, people who serve on the same ops as us. Obviously, we do try and get people on from all kinds of conflicts, but the predominant focus has kind of become what you could term the global war on terror. To that end, we have another guest today who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Really, really interesting and story. It's one that I've never really kind of come across before, to be quite honest, in all the wars that I kind of look at with my work. So something in there, I won't give it away. I'm going to bury the lead. You guys will have to tune in to hear what that is. But let's just say that my mind was blown a bit on this episode. As ever, if you find the episode insightful, valuable, any words you want to put to it, then please share it. We can't grow without you. If you think these stories are worth listening to, someone else will do too. If you can leave reviews, they really help. If you've left a review before, please leave another one. It does let you leave more than one. Rate it on Spotify, drop comments on Spotify. You could do that now as well. If you drop comments on Spotify, then it all just helps the algorithm, guys. And at the end of the day, we are all beholden to the algorithms in our lives now, our digital lives. So please kind of get amongst it. Comments, ratings, reviews, share buttons on Instagram, all that kind of stuff. In terms of frequency episodes, we've kind of settled on 2 because I keep an eye on like how the downloads are going, and it seems that we have like on the day of release, not most of you, but quite a lot of people listen on the first day of release. Really appreciate that. If you haven't got automatic downloads on and notifications for the podcast, then please do that as well. Again, helps the algorithm. If we get a good start, then that helps put it into other people's feeds. But yeah, we've been kind of settling on 2. If you really want more, let me know. It just seems, from what I'm looking at on like the data on that end, it seems that people seem quite content with 2 in terms of downloads. But if you want more, get in touch. Let us know. Because we could go to more if we could. I don't want to be putting out 4 episodes a month if people haven't got a chance to listen to 4 episodes a month. So it's everybody's podcast, You guys are as much as part of this listening as the guests are coming on here and all that kind of side of things. So please do let us know. If you have people that you think would be great guests, let us know. If you want to be a guest yourself, let us know. Everything's down in the show notes. Just want to give a couple more things as well on the war story side of stuff. Obviously, I've done a couple of oral histories about World War II. If you have Spotify Premium, you can listen to those without any extra charge. They're included in your Spotify Premium membership. So put links down to those in the show notes if you want some World War II oral history. And if you want them on Audible and that kind of side of things, are available on there too. And one of those books, Voices of Victory, I had to cut 70,000 words from that book. So 70,000 words is pretty much a book in itself, to be honest. I had to cut that from the first draft to make the book a publishable length. Still ended up being about 150,000 words. So it was a big boy. But those stories now, I don't want those stories to just end up sitting on my laptop forever. So what I'm doing is I'm publishing those on a Substack. I've started a Substack. If you don't know what it is, again, there's a link in the show notes. Just click on it. You'll find out. And I'm releasing those every week or so, usually a few thousand words at a time. So if you want some more soldier stories, these ones in written form, then you can get those on the Substack. Everything on my Substack that's remembrance related is totally free. So there's no need to sign up for membership or anything like that. It's all on there for free. All right. That's a big spiel to get us started. Thanks again, guys, for everything this year. And now let's give our ears and attention to Rick Webb, Afghanistan veteran, Iraq veteran, served with the King's Royal Hussars. Here he is in his own words. Rick, welcome to the podcast, mate. Good to have you on. How are you?
Thank you for having me on. Yeah, very well, mate. I can't grumble too much.
We're going to do a unpaid advertisement at this point for Combat Fuel, which I see nice Combat Fuel shirt that you have on there.
Mate,
using myself. Highly recommending to everyone. There you go, Alex. Bung us a bag of protein in the post. So, mate, I guess, you know what? I'll start with saying this. Both of us, for the audience listening, we don't do video because my internet would not make a very good video because we'd be having like glitchy faces all the time. But but both me and Rick have got a lot of pictures in the background of days gone by. Is it fair to say, mate, that that the army is a massive part of your identity still?
I think it's probably the only part of my identity, to be honest. No, that's a strong statement, but it's not far from reality, mate, to be honest with you. So it's obviously joined as a kid. I'm now 38, so 21 years of my life I've been military, albeit medically discharged back end of 2018. But I then, after a short sort of break, if you will, I went back into the fold, not directly under the umbrella of the MOD, but working for, so UK and US side with the government agencies and that sort of stuff. So it's kind of the only thing that I know, or kind of the only thing that I fully feel comfortable doing, if that makes sense. So I think if I was to lose that part of my identity, I wouldn't even want to think about it, to be honest. I don't know. I think my head would come clean off.
Let's get back to the beginning of the story. Where are you from? And what was it? When was it in your life that you began to gravitate towards this future identity of yours as a soldier?
So I'm from Andover, so it's very much military anyway. Over the years, it's gone more and more. So, like, obviously, land forces, HQ land forces up there now, isn't it? But so I never really even thought about the army, as in me going into the army, until I was 16, left school. Hadn't really crossed my mind, to be honest. I had friends that their parents were serving, and it just was normal. You know what I mean? So one of my very best friends, he joined. He must have been just under 16, Remy initially, and then he saw the light and went off to KOH. But it was him really that sort of got the ball rolling for me, and his dad. So I left school and I had a fairly decent job as a production engineer for a mobility firm, steady away. So what I was 16, 17, earning sort of 800-900 quid a month, which, you know, not a care in the world. It's quite a lot of money. This is back in 2003-4. And then one day he picked me up from work and was like, "Do you like your job?" I said, not really. He said, "Do you want to join the army?" Yeah, okay. Come on, we'll go to the careers office in Salisbury. I was like, "Yeah, fuck it, why not?" So that was the first seed that was planted. And I remember walking into the careers office and classic recruiting sergeant there, whatever regiment they are, "Oh, you need to join this regiment, it's the best," right? It just so happened to be that he was KRH. Now, Aaron, that's my friend's name. Aaron's dad is a bit of a KRH legend, and then he went over to Army Air Corps, became a pilot. So I was like, "Oh, I know that regiment. What's the crack?" So essentially, obviously, went to his office, Sergeant Bretherton, who then later became the RSM. A good friend of mine, served in Iraq together. He was my troop sergeant in Iraq. And yeah, never really looked back. So it happened very, very quickly. And then all of a sudden I found myself at basic training. So this would have been, I want to say, August 05. Yeah, late August, early September 05. I went through my basic training there. And then just, it's weird. Like, I found myself training before I went to basic training to get ready for it. You know, I've never really took anything that serious before in my life. I kind of just cuffed it as I went along. The only thing I could compare it to how serious I took it was football as a kid. So straight away, I thought, well, maybe there's something here. Like, and also, I had people like, "Oh, you won't last 5 minutes," because I was quite rebellious and a bit of a dick. You won't last 5 minutes. I thought, you know what, I'm going to prove a lot of you wrong. So I kind of doubled down before it even started. And then just click that this is exactly where I should be and what I want to be doing. I found it very easy to be away from home. That didn't bother me at all. Not the easiest of childhoods, which most people in the army have that kind of experience, don't they? So that was 05, and then 18 months later, find myself in Iraq until at 10.
All right, and before you get there, mate, I've got a couple of questions. What was the troubled childhood?
So parents split up when my dad actually left to go to Germany. He's a bricklayer, right? I don't know if you've ever seen the program, but Alfie Same Pet from years back. Essentially, he went to Germany when I was like 5 or 6, and just didn't come back. So I was back and forth for a little while. Then I didn't see him for a huge chunk of time, and in that time, he wasn't sending money back to the house. So our house ended up getting repossessed, and I remember as a kid being sat on the sofa with my mum under a duvet, candles on because that's the only light we had. Her reading me a book because that was the entertainment that we had. We had no gas, electricity, nothing. So, kind of from then on, it was very much not like me against my dad in a way, but he was in my eyes. I was 6, 7 now, 8 years old. Like, my dad's abandoned us. He's disappeared. We're losing all this stuff. Like, it was only because my mum, years down the line now, fast forward to when I'm 11, and we've been hiding behind the sofa from the bailiffs knocking on the door, and my mum pretending it's a game, stuff like that. Then she met another guy, and once the house was repossessed, he said, "Come live with me for a couple of weeks, keep yourself squared away, and find another house and stuff." And then we just didn't leave that house. So again, that wasn't like an easy transition going into this stranger's house. Another man, like, where the fuck's my dad? Why are you here now? And I was 11, so really starting to go through that time, with changing and growing up. And I was on my own a lot. I got a sister, but she was a lot older than me, so she was out with her friends doing her thing. And my mum kind of at that point was, I don't know, trying to make up for lost time, I suppose. So she was always out on the piss with this new guy, and 11, 12 years old, I'm making my own dinner. I'm taking myself upstairs to go to bed at 11 p.m. Still no one's at home. Just spend a lot of time in my own sort of company. So I kind of got comfortable with that. And then I wasn't asked about not seeing them. I didn't have that closeness anymore. Wasn't really, I remember one time they came back from the pub, and my mum had already said to me, I'm a kid at this point, right? She said, "Oh, don't worry about sorting any dinner out. We're going to bring fish and chips home." I remember it like it was yesterday. I was like, yeah, okay, cool. So anyway, they came back much later than what they said they were going to come back, because obviously they wanted a couple more jars or whatever. And they rolled through the door, stinking of booze. And they started dishing out the dinner that they brought home, only 2 plates. And I was like, where's my dinner, sort of thing? And then they said, "Oh, we forgot." And I was like, "What do you mean you forgot? Like, you said you were going to get me, what am I going to eat now?" I remember my stepdad turned around, grabbed me here, shoved me against the fridge, head on head sort of thing. Like, "Don't you fucking speak to your mother that way," this and the other. I was like, "Dude, I'm fucking 12 and I'm hungry. Like, you said you were going to get, what the fuck's this?" So yeah, very, very much controlled by booze. Like, I couldn't speak to him before he'd had a few jars. When he got back in from work, he was a builder as well. He's a roofer. You couldn't approach him in the mornings because he was still rough from the night before, getting ready to go to work. And then when he got home, you had to allow 3 beers, specifically 3 beers. Then you could speak to him. Then you could ask him a question. Or he used to just disappear off down the pub straight from work, come in for, my mum would be making dinner. He'd come home, smash that in his face. You could see he's had a few jars by that point, and then he'd carry on drinking at home. So if he had been drinking, he was sort of more comfortable to be around. But if he hadn't been drinking, he was a dick. And he'd let you know too. So actually, when my friend said, do you want to join the army? I thought, fuck me, yeah. Get me out of Dodge. Do you know what I mean? So I found that so easy to be away. And hand on heart, I've never once been homesick. But as a kid, the further away, the better. Do you know what I mean?
Did you have... Yeah, man. Did you have any positive like male role models in the shape of maybe like football coaches, anything like that?
Not really, mate. No. So it wasn't all negative with Barry, right? He's now actually, he died of cancer last year, but hit the family hard, unfortunately, bar me. And I don't mean that to sound nasty, but he had made it obvious he didn't want me to be a part of the family. Made it obvious he didn't want my kids to be involved. Cut me out of the will, all that sort of shit. So whatever, dude. Like, I'll be there for my mum and for my sister, but do you know what I mean? Like, this might sound cold, but I'm sure you can understand where I'm coming from and how we're drilled, aren't we? But so there's a few people. I played football, like I said, a lot, but I was always quite quiet, kept myself to myself. I wasn't flooded with confidence or anything like that, So there was one guy that I can sort of think about. He's just know him as Grandad. Gordon, his name was, but he's a Cockney. He's a Londoner, and he had a lot of involvement with like the craze and all that sort of side of London, but not from a nasty perspective. He was more like an organizer and a fixer for the boys, really. But every time he used to come round to the house, he'd bring a big bunch of flowers for my old dear, and shake my hand, stick a lady in it, stick a fiver in it, and say, "You fucking behaving, look after your mum." He was very big on look after your mum. So really, that's kind of, he was quite old fashioned and treat a woman this way, look after your kids this way. Albeit he was organising some carnage for naughty people in London, but kind of, I think gangsters back in the day were gentlemen first, weren't they? Do you know what I mean?
I see. Yeah, I've been reading quite a lot about like London gangsters in like the 30s, 40s and stuff, and there definitely is that kind of dichotomy that they seem to be quite, like you say, one hand quite gentleman and the other. I'm going to go on a tangent here, but only because I think you'll find the story interesting.
Yeah.
Like Billy Hill, who he was the guy that the craze came up under.
That's right.
They were doing a robbery, and Billy's accomplice, there was a maid in the house. The house was supposed to be empty, and Billy's accomplice coshed the maid over the head and knocked her out. So Billy called the police and waited with her until the police got there, even though it meant him getting nicked. Wow. And then when they nicked him, Billy took the rap for the caution as well, even though it was an accomplice that did it. And like I said, I do find that kind of era of gangsters really kind of quite fascinating, really.
It is fascinating because you don't want to sit here and justify the wrongs that they were doing, right? Because it's criminal, right? But at the same breath, the way they went about it was almost Robin Hood-like, wasn't it? In a way.
Yeah, in a way. And when you hear like the lives that they had growing up and how poor they were and how they were treated as kids in Borstal and stuff, like, to use Billy again, he was basically sentenced to hard labor as a kid and stuff. And, pretty interesting. If anyone was interested, go and read about Billy Hill, go and look him up. Fascinating bloke. Back onto you, mate. Another fascinating bloke. When you joined up, mate, Iraq, Afghan, it was all going off by this point. Had you been paying attention to it in the news? Did that influence your decision at all?
So I remember coming back from school one day to my mate's house, and 9/11 it was all going off at this point. So I think I would have been 14 then, ish, 2001, 14. And I remember seeing the TV thinking, not having a clue what it was, not having a clue what it meant. I remember seeing that. And from then, I suppose, in the back of my mind, I knew that was going to be in relation to the military somehow, right? Didn't really put too much thought into it. I was still just kicking around on a skateboard and stuff at that point. But so when I then did join, it was at the height of all of these things. Iraq had only just started, really. So Iraq was 2 years in. Afghan was 4 years in. So really shaping what the whole war on terror and Operation Iraqi Freedom was looking like. So I didn't really, naive, I suppose, I didn't really give it a thought. I was like, yeah, I'll go do that. Not really thinking about what it meant. And I remember the first time it really hit me, I thought, fuck, this is real. And it was, we'd gone into QA, we'd done our RSOI package to 10-day, whatever it was, to acclimatise, and depending on what your job role is, depending on what you then brush up on, don't you, before you deploy to your AO. And I remember being on the Herc, I'm sure it was, and going from QA into Basra. Have to fly in at night time for obvious reason. The lights and everything were on, and then all of a sudden it just, the message got sent down, 5 mics. Everything went dark. We had to then put all of our kit on. Okay, we're sitting there with our rifles, everything's pitch black, and I can't see my hand in front of my face. Pilots having to do the same thing. And I was like, oh fuck, this is real now. This is real. I'm trying frantically to see something out the window, some street light. I mean, there's no fucking street lights, it's Basra. And then you couldn't see the floor. You had no idea when that plane was going to hit, but I knew that we were having a hard landing because we had to get the fuck out of there quick. So we're coming down proper hard and fast now. And just hit the floor, and it's like, right, go. Shit, so you've got like 30 seconds to get off the back of whatever you're landing on, be it Chinook. Well, actually, Chinooks weren't operational because it was too fucking hot. So you had Merlins a lot of the time, or Hercs. Then you get out from that aircraft, across the apron as fast as you can, under the hard standing, where you're, inverted commas, safe, right? And then it's like, welcome to Basra. And you can see it's riddled with everything stood out at this point, right? Because it's the cob where I was in, so it was the airport, right? The tower and everything there. And I was like, oh, fuck, okay. This is legit. Okay. And then that was it. That's all I thought about. I was like, okay. And again, naive, not really understanding. I mean, I was 18 at this point, I think, 19 at this point. Very, very naive, wet behind the ears. I've been in the army 5 minutes. And all of a sudden I'm here, and I'm like, this is really hot and dusty. Okay. But that was the first time it kind of hit me, to say, okay, you're part of this now. Don't fuck it up.
Is there any particular smells or anything you remember from that arrival?
Yeah, just really, really like hot. The air, you could smell the air being hot with a hint of cordite, but then diesel fumes, just diesel fumes. Like a lot of it was obviously the aircraft and everything around there, but I won't say what we used to call them, but the locals that walk around camp would have like a 2-stroke engine exhaust, and they'd spray hot diesel onto it, and that smoke that come off would clear the insects and the mosquitoes and whatever else, right? Used to come around, and that smell of 2-stroke hits me in the back of the face every time I smell it, as if they're walking around your tents and your wherever you are, clearing all the shit that's around you, but literally with just diesel fumes and smoke in your face. So yeah, diesel fumes, and then there's always a hint of shit in the air in Iraq. No matter where you are, it's always a hint of shit. And depending on how close you get to the huge dump that's there, or the jingly buses used to come around, or the honeysuckers used to get rid of all the, from the septic tanks and that. It's just not a single nice smell anywhere you went. I mean, you could be sat in a cookhouse with a beef Wellington on the go, and you can still just smell shit or diesel. But it's fond memories at the same time.
For the sake of historical reference, if someone listens to this in 200 years' time, and not because you are using the term now in a derogatory way, what did you call the locals?
Chogies. So I can't even tell you why. It's just, that's what we would say. And again, naive, very young. I heard one of the more senior people say it. So I was like, well, if he's saying it, that's obviously what it is. Do you know what I mean? So we all would just say it, not really understanding what it meant and how it would be offensive, right? And a lot, we, as soldiers, we say a lot of stuff that to the normal person, to the civilian, would be like, fucking hell, dude, you can't say that. But we don't say it from a malicious place. We're not trying to be offensive intentionally. And again, that's not me justifying it, but it's a lack of understanding from them to how we operate, and that's just what we do. That's how we get by. That's how we stay operational. That's how, if we had worried about every single thing that would come out of our mouth, we wouldn't say anything. And that's a dangerous place to be, certainly on ours.
Well, the way you talk to your best mates is pretty offensive, isn't it? Right?
Yeah, mate. If you tried that in the office on a Monday morning, you'd get sacked pretty quick.
Yeah. I just want to rewind a little bit, mate, but just to that kind of you described it as 5 minutes. You've been in the army for 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. What was it like arriving in the KRH as a new soldier? Had they been out on ops before? Were you around some experienced blokes?
Yeah, so the regiment had done Telex 6 only a little bit beforehand. So and they'd lost a couple of guys on that. So they had, and obviously prior it was all Northern Ireland we were heavily involved in Northern Ireland, Iraq. Some of the guys in the regiment, Iraq for the initial invasion and Afghan for the initial invasion too. So the regiment has been heavily involved in ops really. So when I got there, I went to C Squadron, which at the time was IMA, so intermediate armor. But basically, I never once touched a tank the whole time I was in the regiment. I was either recce vehicles, a warrior, which obviously it's a personnel carrier first, really, isn't it? Or on my feet. So I got to the regiment with this sort of understanding of it's a Challenger, it's a main battle tank regiment, not knowing that it had these other two elements that were nothing to do with tanks. And that's where I got put. And I thought, wow, this is even better than a tank. Fuck tanks, I'm not interested anymore. This shit's pretty cool. So fortunately for me, I had some really, really good mentors and role models who, one of whom I'm still really close with today, injured on the same tour as me, actually, in Afghan. We were recce together at times, and we did a lot together. So the experience that these guys had, I clung on to and kind of modeled myself on how they were as soldiers. And it served me well. It did me well. I was very comfortable within my set.
So there was no hazing, no beasting for being a new bloke. They actually kind of took you under the wing and brought you on.
I think, I suppose not physically beasting, but they let you know that you're the new boy and you get the shit jobs, which you'd expect, right? Yeah, the wind ups and the initiations, stuff like that. If initiations get taken away, the army loses the spirit of who it is, right? Because I don't want to use the term character building, but it is character building. Without those things, I would, it put confidence in me, made me realize that I am welcome here. It wasn't bullying. There was a few people that were like that within the regiment, a few bad eggs, as you always get, and would try to take things too far and power mad if they had rank and you didn't. But for the most part, really, really positive.
So when you arrived, were they already on pre-deployment training? Was
yeah. So the regiment were in Canada at the time, and they were just finishing up that particular exercise in Canada. So then when they got back with this big reorg, putting people in various places, and then really was hit the ground running for pre-deployment training for what was coming up. And actually, as CBRT, so we had us and Recce Troop. I did a full pre-deployment training package. So what's that, 6 months, whatever it was, for Afghanistan on CBRT. So everything we were doing was aimed towards CBRT, Recce stuff, all that sort of good stuff in Afghanistan which would have been 2007. And literally 2 weeks before we were due to deploy, we were just about to go on leave before we deployed, pre-deployment leave. And I remember we got taken into the garrison theatre for an emergency meeting, thinking, "Oh, what's going on here?" And then, bang! You're now not going to Afghanistan. they put together this other, this where Mastiff and Ridgeback and stuff came about. So then you had these other people now from the regiment that were going to go and do Afghanistan on these vehicles because CVRT now had proven fucking dog shit in the country. You're now going to switch roles, but still be on CVRT/foot, but you're now going to go to Iraq. It's like, fucking hell, what? So now we had to squeeze this huge 6-month package into like 2 months or whatever it was. It was absolute carnage. And just forget everything we'd learned from Afghanistan and switch fire to Iraq. But it's two very, very different war zones, as I'm sure you can appreciate. The sort of, on the surface, it's the same thing to people that don't necessarily understand why it would be different in the type of warfare that you're looking at. But just the technology that we're facing in Iraq in comparison to Afghanistan, even now, is immensely different. If we're talking about IEDs and component parts, ammunitions, whatever, it's such a huge difference between the two. I mean, even right the way out to the end of Afghanistan, they didn't have the technology that Iraq have. Obviously, it's coming over from Iran, wasn't it? So what we did for the first 3.5 months of the tour was like desert rat stuff. So we were doing recce's, doing OPs, or putting OPs in on the Iranian border, catching everything that's coming across, gathering all the information that's coming across the borders and firing that off to other call signs that would then intercept and stop those component parts and all the naughty stuff coming into the country. And that was some of the most brutal living I've ever done. Been in an OP in the middle of the desert for days at a time was graft. We were just, you couldn't get enough water in you. Blokes were dropping with heat exhaustion left, right and centre because when you were not in a vehicle, it was like 70 degrees in the sun, 50 degrees in the shade. Yeah. When you're in the vehicles, I was a driver then, so new boy, shit job driver. And in the CVRT, for anybody that doesn't know, it's a very small reconnaissance vehicle, right? It's tracked, but it's very small. And you've got the driver's cab is very, very small. And just next to your right side, as you're sitting in the vehicle, is the firewall, and on the other side of that is the engine, and obviously it's all metal. And inside that cab was anywhere between 90 and 95 degrees centigrade. Right, so but you've got to drive that thing with body armor and helmet on, right? You can't not. So what we were having to do as drivers, our commanders and gunners above us were pouring water over us as we're driving, so that we didn't fucking boil from the inside out. Right? But some of the road moves you were doing were like 8-10 hours long. And you weren't able to just move at night. You had to move whenever they needed you to move. So some days we'd be driving at midday, 2:00 in the afternoon. And it's just as hot for people in the turret, right? It's not like it's extremely cool up there compared to the driver's cab, but specifically the driver's cab where you just don't get that air in there. You had no choice but to drive head up, which puts you at a huge risk anyway. So yeah, the first thing you're fighting is the elements, not even the enemy. Just because you're trying to survive. And I went down twice with heat exhaustion. Just my body, I was very young, very, very skinny, nothing on me. You couldn't get enough food in you. You couldn't get enough electrolytes in you. You couldn't get enough water in you. And I remember twice waking up in the hospital back in Basra because I'd gone fucking man down and not realised what's happened. And I was one of many. Each time, though, I fucking went back out. You can't.
How old are you?
I was 19.
How old are you, mate?
Oh, and now I'm 38.
So before you went out on the to Iraq, what had you been kind of told about the situation in, like, you've mentioned the IEDs and stuff. What had you been told in terms of what the situation on the ground was like in casualties, the amount of fighting, that kind of thing? Did you guys know what was going on in Iraq? Because obviously Afghanistan at the time was on the news a lot. Wasn't so much about Iraq, was it?
Yeah. So now I'm sure that we were informed about exactly what was going on, but it didn't really come down to my level. Do you know what I mean? Or what we were told what we needed to know. So if I look at it now from a command standpoint, the tour of Afghan I was in a command role. If I look at it from a command standpoint, I understand it to a certain extent. But equally, I think that's why we were all so naive, because we didn't know. We only knew what we would go out of our way to find. And obviously, the internet, being online, wasn't a thing. It was very new for us there, really, wasn't it? So you had the welfare tent where you had, like, I don't know, 8 computers, whatever it was, shared between fucking 1,000 people. So it was literally figure out as you go. And a daily basis, we would get absolutely hammered with Chinese rockets and mortars. Hammered. So we were in a place called Camp Charlie within the Central Operating Base, right? Did you know it?
Yeah, I lived in Charlie for a few months, mate.
Right, Roger. So it's right on the extremity, isn't it? So you've got Camp Charlie, fence, fucking Badlands, yeah? So what they were doing was using this is the enemy now, they were using the tower in the airport as their sort of focal point, and then they would just make adjustments off that tower. And then they would have what we would still call dickers within the COB, within Camp Charlie, on a mobile phone, like 2 clicks left, mate, you've got it, type deal. So where we were right on the very end, it was very easy. We were such an easy target, really. So they would always focus on Camp Charlie. It wasn't very often you'd still get attacks around the rest of the COP, but they would fire into the remainder of the airbase with hope, really. And a lot of the time they would just have mishits, or no hits at all. It'd just be a road or a shitty disused building. It wasn't very often. They don't get me wrong, they did get some direct hits of some pretty important places, but more luck than judgment. Whereas they were able to judge what they were hitting within Camp Charlie. So every day we would come back from whatever we were doing, and there'd be new holes in the tent where some shrapnel's gone through it, or there'd be a tent next door now, no longer a tent next door because it's had a direct hit. The tank park opposite us in the Dust Bowl, wagons were getting smashed up in there. I remember once, I laugh about it, but I was walking to the med center. I think I had to have a jab, or so it wasn't anything in particular, but I had to have this thing done before I was able to go out and do the next thing. Kind of your pre-op checks and stuff. And my mate had just come back from the med center. He said, "Oh, mate, they're really busy. Do you want to have a quick smoke?" So I said, "Yeah, fuck, why not?" So I turned around, went back, had a quick smoke. I was still going to be on time for my appointment. But in that time that I turned around and gone back, the med center had a direct hit. So had not gone back for that cigarette, chances are I would have been very close, if not already inside that building. But again, that was close. All right. What do I do with my appointment? The first thing I thought of, what do I do with my appointment now? I need to have that done so I can deploy. Right? But fortunately, nobody was hurt. But there was many situations like that. Again, I was walking to the cookhouse, direct hit from this Chinese rocket. There was this local lad driving a bobcat, doing, digging or fucking whatever he's doing. And then smash right in front of us. This dude's just sat on this bobcat, and what the fuck was that? And the back end of this thing's completely blown off because it's a direct hit from a rocket or a mortar, whatever it was. And he's running around doing, fucking going crazy. And we're like, dude, calm down, you're fine. But again, that was completely normal. I didn't think about it. It's just like, do we have a thing? Do you know what I mean? You don't think about it. And now when I think about it, I was like, fucking hell, no wonder you're a bit of a lunatic. That was normal living. But every day we would just get anywhere between 10 and fucking 50 attacks a day. The alarm was going off more than it wasn't. To the point where, so again, apologies for going on a tangent here, but so I don't know if you remember what the accommodation was, but inside the tent you had what we would call the coffin. You'd have the hip-height breeze blocks, like the full-on concrete breeze blocks, and then you'd have the sheet of Kevlar that you would lay underneath. That's where you would sleep. So if you did get a direct hit, you had this huge lump of Kevlar above you to hopefully stop the blast, but would still crush you because it's gonna land on your face while you're asleep. But these attacks got so regular that some mornings I would wake up and somebody within my 5-man room would have placed my body armor over the top of me because the alarm's going off. We've got rockets coming in literally meters away from us, and I've slept through it. Just slept through the whole thing, and someone's gone, fucking hell, I better put something over Webby in case he gets smashed up. And you wake up thinking, what the fuck's this? And then, you know, one of the lads like, did you not hear that last night? They were literally right outside the tent. Nope, slept straight through that. That's not normal. But some of the best sleep I've ever had.
That's what driving in fucking 90-degree heat will do to you, mate.
It ruins you, yeah. So you kind of go back to the cob for a bit of respite, but actually it was more kinetic there than it was in the OPs.
So, can you remember the first time you went out on and off?
So, yeah, the first thing I did was, so that you'd had people already go out there and like set things up, stuff like that. So then what I was doing was taking over from the guys that had already gone out and done the first kind of rotation, if you will. So some things had already been set up, but every time you go on a rotation, what you'd have to do is collapse that place and move on to the next one, because obviously you can't stay in the same place for too long. You just start getting in IDF coming out of your indirect fire. So we got taken down to where the airport, if you will, and we'd get Merlins then from Basra, from the Cobb in Basra out to wherever we're going to be in the Maysan province, so in the desert. But it's like in some cases like 2 hours on this helicopter, just brutal, door down all the time. So I remember flying out there thinking, right, this, not really understanding what was going on, but I remember as we're getting onto the aircraft, so we start getting mortared. So we get the shout from the crew saying, like, hurry the fuck up, just get on, we've got to go. And there was quite often, because of the heat, the helicopters would have to take off like a plane would, because it didn't it put it under too much stress to just lift like we would do in Africa. So quite often you taxi and then you take off, whereas the kind of the procedure for if you're getting smashed up, just go. So I remember getting on this aircraft, a little bit worried about what's going on, and more about like not understanding or worrying about what it looks like, what it's going to be, because I have nothing to compare it to. So at the back of my mind, I was a little bit concerned, but not like scared of it, but just thinking a bit apprehensive, like, don't look like a new boy, don't fuck this up. Do you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, you hear them coming in, bang, bang, bang. Like the noise is so. Even now, like I'll hear something and I think, fuck, because it sounds just like a Chinese rocket going over your head. But that's the noise we heard. And then just go, 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 go. And this fucking helicopter just went, wow, lifts up into the air. So good start to your first stop, Brian. But it was like I forget what it was. It was either 2 or 3 week turnaround. You do 3 weeks out, 5 days back in, something like that. Sometimes longer, depending on manpower, really. And I remember getting to where we needed to be in the Maysan province, in the middle of nowhere's arsehole, and you get picked up by your now crew, if you will, for your wagon, whatever you're going on, be it. We had Wimix, the old cut down Land Rovers, and CDRT, similar Spartan, some other bits. And then you'd get road move from there then, I say road move, you know, through the abyss to your FOB, where we had Israeli camp nets. And these things are like fucking circus tents. They are enormous and they're super fucking heavy. But the important take on these is they have 2 settings, if you will. One side will keep heat in and one side will keep heat out. And there's no way of telling which one's which until you put that fucker up. So if you get this enormous cam net up, which honestly, mate, takes like 10 people and a long time to get it squared away, all of a sudden you think, fuck me, that's the wrong way. But you don't have the time, patience, or energy, so you just wear it. You just raw dog the fact that it's now 60 degrees over here and not 50. And that was kind of my first experience of it.
And how close are you operating to the Iranian border?
Oh, in some cases, accidentally, we went over. So you'd go right up to the border posts sometimes. and you would talk to the border control staff, if you will. You'd have a conversation with them and check it all out or whatever else. And then the OPs were... So I remember this one particular OP where we parked our wagons in what can only be described as a huge hole in the floor. But in that hole was like trees and bushes and stuff like that, which is where all the nasty shit in the desert lives, right? That you don't want to be a part of. Insects, fucking you name it, it's in there. It's Cameron spiders, the fucking works. And then next to this huge hole was this huge mound of earth. It's almost as though someone had dug this hole with a digger and put this huge mound of earth next to it. So, right, okay, we know that behind us is good. You can see left and right for miles, right? So we know that behind us is covered. Our fob is that way. So it's not the rear cover we need to be worried about, it's the forward cover we need to worry about. So trying to think about it, it's probably like 500-600 meters away from the border. And we're in this OP, the big hole in the floor, big mound of dirt. And you could go up into this mound of dirt and dig a little hole at the top where you had kind of like a sanger, if you will, right? Where the stag position where you had cover from the front, but you could duck behind it, get your binos out and notepad and pen. And that's where we were for days, looking at the Iranian border. And anything that come across, vehicles, anything, you'd write down, you'd pass it down to your platoon sergeant, whoever the senior person was. And they would then decipher through that and decide what needs to be sent either east or west, depending on who's there. And a couple of times I know that Hereford were kicking about over that way, intercepted these things, not in a friendly way. Obviously, we got close to that lot, but we were more... Obviously, if you're doing reconnaissance type work, be it even if you're not recce specifically, but you're doing that sort of role, you if you're kinetic, something's gone wrong, someone's fucked up. Do you know what I mean? So it wasn't overly kinetic, that part of the tour. We had a few occasions where we got found and then inevitably mortars would come in. And there's not a great deal you can do about that other than hide underneath your wagon. That's all you can do. But they didn't necessarily have the manpower or the ammunition to be doing huge attacks on us. Not like it was in Afghan. So you'd have pop shots more than anything. And again, it became the norm. What was a mortar? And you slowly walk to your vehicle, bimble away, roll underneath it. Do you know what I mean? More, it's a nose that you're being mortared. It's a nose you're being attacked. Because you just want to fucking sit down and have some fucking water for a minute. Do you know what I mean? So if that was super kinetic, we fucked up. But it was more just physically and mentally draining and not getting that information wrong. Because if you give information over that's incorrect and someone does put a strike in down the road based on our information and it's wrong, someone's getting fucking sacked, aren't they? Someone's going to get in a lot of trouble. So again, being naive and young, I had no idea the weight of what I was doing and what it really meant. It was only afterwards I really understood it.
And what are you looking for coming across the border?
So that was, the main thing was component parts for IEDs. Where it was Iran supplying Iraq, you didn't have the homemade explosive like we were facing in Afghan. It was like a lot of what we faced actually was like the molten slugs, with the very, very precise projectiles where they were able to create these IEDs for, let's say, a scimitar, because it's happened, where the projectiles, they have 3 projectiles, and they were able to make these IEDs with the correct degree of angle with 3 projectiles in it, where one projectile would go to the driver, and then the other 2 would go to the commander and the gunner up top of the turret. And they were able to get our measurements, get our, the angles. They were able to get every piece of information possible and create IEDs to target those specifically. If you think a Challenger 2, the only place that's ever been compromised was Iraq, because they found the only area of soft skin on that vehicle, and it was underneath the driver's feet. The only place anyone's ever been breached in a Challenger 2 is Iraq, because the Iranians were feeding them this. They were feeding them the component parts, the weapons, the ammunition. So out in the desert, a little bit different. But that's essentially where it was coming through from to the main fight, which was in Basra or, Baghdad, the palace, that sort of stuff. So essentially, we were out there to try and cut it off at source.
Did you ever get into any skirmishes or standoffs with the Iranians? As in they're like official forces?
No, not to my knowledge. But again, if we did, I wouldn't have known about it. It would have been far too risky to tell the young boys what's just happened. So I remember specifically being in this minefield. So we'd gone through in this convoy, and the vehicle in front of us had gone over a mine, and it had blown, and it had, I forget, it's 2 occasions. One of them had actually flown the track off, but this other one, it hadn't damaged the vehicle enough to stop it. But however, it had gone off, so now we're fucked, right? So what we've got to do is reverse out of there in the exact same tracks that we've just gone in on. If you get out of the vehicles, you can't move because you don't know where the mines are. But that was actually over the border without us realising. So we're about 500 metres in country now. And if something happens out there, we are fucked. Right? That's like orange boiler suit territory, right? So there was a bounty on every single soldier's head. They wanted an orange boiler suit and our heads on Al Jazeera, right? That's what they wanted. So the whole reason Prince Harry, so I did pre-op training with Prince Harry. I remember playing Time Crisis with him at fucking Lid in the Nafi. And he was like, you can't go there because there's like a $50,000 bounty on your head and you're putting everyone else at risk for being out there. So he didn't go there. He did do Afghan, obviously. But all of us were at risk of kidnap. So worst case scenario now, you've got a full troop somewhat over the border, even if it's 50 meters over the border. You've crossed that line that you shouldn't have crossed. So we need to get out of there like Schnellmachen. And I remember driving. I was driving and I was the second vehicle. The one in front of us had just been hit by this mine. And I can't see what's going on. And the commander's turned around and looking the other way. And he's telling me left stick, right stick, left stick, right stick. But obviously the left stick and the right stick is opposite to what he can see compared to what I'm going to do because we are reversing on a tank, right? So you've got to make sure that understanding is clear. Because one wrong pull of the stick and it could be index for everybody in that vehicle. And I'm putting full faith in this dude to not fuck that up. And everyone else has put full faith in each other to not fuck that up. Fortunately, we got out of there and moved on as though nothing had happened. But it's going through the desert. I remember being in a Land Rover and I was driving left-hand drive Land Rover, and we're going through all these huge mountains and these traps, and anywhere left and right is just a sheer drop. Like if you go over there, you're dead. There's fast fact. But everywhere you can just see UXO, unexploded ordnance everywhere, from the Iran-Iraq stuff, just from the Soviet stuff. It's absolutely riddled. Everywhere you go is a minefield. At any minute, you don't know if your next step's your last one because it's just shit everywhere. And you've got to try and operate in that effectively. Yeah, it's messy.
Did you is that the Iran-Iraq war leftovers? Is that like burnt out tanks, vehicles, trenches, that kind of thing?
Oh yeah, you got everything out there, mate. Everything out there. You got the old wagons that are all just. We used to use them for ranges, like we would do it like Castle Mine, for example. But these were like real time. Some fuckers died in that thing. Do you know what I mean? We used to use those for ranges a lot of the time. Yeah, it was chaos.
So you mentioned creepy crawlies a little bit earlier. Do you have any particular experiences with those?
Camel spiders specifically, yeah, in Iraq. So and scorpions. That's the thing, that in the desert you had both, and then in Basra, really you only had you had the camel spiders more than anything else. But I remember sitting on my little cot bed, which they're horrendous at the best of times. These things, aren't they? Yeah. But now I remember laying down on a cot bed, and I'd be laying down for maybe 2 minutes, and I'd have to get up and actually splash off and push off this huge puddle where my calves have been on this bed, and it's so hot. I'm sweating so much from places I didn't know existed. I'm actually having to splash the sweat off. So I'm trying to relax. I'm trying to, stay alive from the heat itself. And all of a sudden I hear this like clicking noise. And I'm like, the fuck is that? Because the ground was so baked everywhere we were. It wasn't like deep sand, not everywhere. It's full blown baked. And I'm like, that's something crawling. What is that? And I lifted my legs up, and out from underneath my cot bed comes this bright yellow scorpion with a red tip on its tail. That thing is super poisonous. One bite from that, one sting from that, and it's game over. And I remember we were two times, I remember this happening. We were waiting for the flight to come pick us up, the helicopter to come pick us up from, the HLS from Maysan to take us back to the Cobb in Basra. And all of a sudden this officer's going, fuck, like this, like smack, like holding himself in his torso, running around, and this black scorpion had got up into his shirt and stung him something like 9 times. This scorpion had just smashed him to pieces because he was laying down on the floor with his head on his day sat, getting his head down, waiting for the flight to come in. And he got smashed up. Black scorpions aren't that dangerous. They'll fuck you up, but they won't kill you. The lighter coloured they are, the more venomous they are. And then another time, a good friend of mine one of kind of the role models I looked up to. He got done by a scorpion a couple of times too, and then both times these boys ended up in hospital in Basra to be squared away before they could come back out again. But it was mainly scorpions and camel spiders, and the lads would get a camel spider that was dead and throw it in your DOS bag, stuff like that. Shoot yourself when you come back in from stag, you get your DOS bag middle of the night, you've got a giant camel spider in there. But yeah,
Did you ever do the creepy? Sorry, mate.
No, go mate. Did I do?
I was saying, did you ever go do the kind of creepy crawlies in an ammunition tin battles?
Yeah, mate. The scorpions against the camel spiders. Every time the scorpion wins. Every time. Yeah, we used to do mad shit like that.
What are some of the things that can you remember anything like along those kind of lines of like maybe like pranks against each other? Anything like that stood out while you guys are out in the desert trying to find ways to amuse yourselves?
Right. So a lot of it you had to be really careful with light. So you had to be kind of covert the whole time. So you couldn't do too much throughout the evening, like even to the point of where you had to be very careful when you were smoking your fags and stuff. But a lot of it was just playing cards when you're downtime, or a lot of it was just you're so white. No one really had too much energy for pranks and shit, but it was so that sort of came when we were back in what we would call camp, right? Running the gauntlet, stuff like that. But we then had the gym, we had the welfare center, we had ping pong stuff, table tennis, that sort of shit. But mainly like running the gauntlet. If you were a new boy and you had been flown out to replace someone or whatever it would be, first initiation was one of two things: flaming arseholes, which is still a thing today. I'll explain what that is for those that don't know in a second. And then running the gauntlet, so you'd have to run from. So the tents had one like corridor all the way from front to back, and then off of it was all the rooms, wasn't it? With like the plywood slidey doors or whatever. And you'd have to get from one end to the other, basically just get from one end to the other without being stopped. But people would be hitting you with fucking metal chairs, just chaos. Like no one ever made it through, but that was kind of one of the things you have to do. And then the other one, for those that don't know, what flaming arseholes is, it's you in front of everybody, you pull your trousers and your boxers down, dick out. Usually it's done with a beer in hand, but when you're on ops, you don't get that. You'd have a bottle of water or something. And you get measured from your arsehole down to your ankle with a bit of toilet roll. And then you'd have the time that it takes somebody to light the bottom of that toilet roll for it to burn all the way up to your arsehole, hence flaming arsehole, to drink that full can of beer or whatever beverage somebody is wanted you to be drinking. Again, you're never going to win that battle. But all people want to see is the willingness to take part. And then you're in. But we used to do stupid shit like that just for the crack, just because you're bored.
If we had to put a list together of things that you were most worried about, creepy crawlies, rockets, IEDs, or anything else you can think of, what were the things that you were most worried about in order of like kind of, this is what I'm most worried about?
Insects first. Right. And I'm sure I'm not the only person that would say that, which sounds stupid, right? But I knew what I was dealing with the other two to a certain extent. I knew what it was, whereas it was more the unknown of what that thing's going to do to me if it gets hold of me. Right? I kind of knew where I stood with a rocket or an IED, but the big IEDs that we were worried about, and this came about whilst we were there, is the PIR, so the passive infrared stuff, where for those that don't maybe know what it is, if you walk into like an office block, into an office, in the top right corner, top left corner, you'll see a little, well, certainly from beforehand, you see a little white box with a window on it. And underneath that window would be a little red light. And when you walk past that window, the red light would come on. And it's just to show movement. And obviously that would maybe trigger CCTV, or that would trigger something to start up. And that, what the Iraqis with Iran's help, they were then creating PIR IEDs. So, for example, everywhere you go in Iraq, it's just mounds and mounds of rubble and rock and just blown up shit. So what they were doing was making this IED one way or another, and then surrounding that with like expanding foam, and then rolling it through the dirt and essentially painting it to be a giant boulder. But what they would do would leave a very, very small window in it, and in that window would be the passive infrared receiver, right? So there's no way you can see that really to the naked eye. You're not going to be able to tell. So, and they knew that we couldn't stop for everything. They knew that. So what that would then do is, when you drive past it on the road and your vehicle goes past that window that they've left open, that would be the trigger. And off goes this enormous IED. And they figured that out whilst we were there, or at least it was becoming more widely used while we were there. And that's when the old name for it is Macorba, which would now be the enhanced ECM, the enhanced electronic countermeasure. And what it would do would put out like a microwave. I think it was 20 meters in front of you, something like that. It would put out a microwave 20 meters in front of you, so then that would go through the window first, then your vehicle after. So you had basically 20 meters, 25 meters from that bomb going bang to you coming through it. And that, in the powers that be, their minds, that was like, yeah, that'll work. You're 20 meters away from it, it's fine. But some of these IEDs are like 150 kilos big. So if you look at any video online, you'll see the size of these IEDs are just absolutely enormous. And in their mind, we were 20 meters away from that, you're fine. Do you know what I mean? Don't worry about it. And I remember being stood on the we call it the Dust Bowl, and fitting these ECM boxes to the front of our vehicle. So what we did halfway through the tour was re-rolled. We switched from the desert to then downtown Basra. We took over from the rifles. I forget which battalion it was. We took over from the rifles. We're now on Bulldog 432 Mark II, the real shit ones. And when they've got all the up armor and stuff on here, it doesn't really drive very well. You can't turn properly. You can't go up hills. They're fucking awful bits of kit. But that's what we went on to, is those. And we had to then fit all these ECM boxes to the front of the CBRTs, front of these Bulldogs and stuff like that, because it became apparent that these were being used more often than anything else, along with what were they called? Like the ECPs, like the projectiles that were essentially molten lava. So they would then penetrate through the side of the vehicles. So it was mainly those projectiles, and then the EFPs. EFP, thank you, sorry, ECP. EFPs, thank you. that was the main fight with IEDs now. So it was a mad time to think that they had us lot fitting these boxes on the front, not really knowing if they're going to work properly or not, because we're trying to wire them into the fucking batteries and shit. We've got, dickhead here in the middle of the night, pissed off because I'm now not getting my head down because we've got to do these things. It took us like a week to do all this stuff. And we're still going out on these various options, still doing this, that, and the other. In and out of the desert, all this sort of shit. And just absolutely no respite whatsoever. So chances are those things weren't fitted properly. For not all of them anyway. And then they're just, gone in off your pop, you've got them on now. Some lads would be driving out. They're like, stop, I haven't turned on my ECM yet. You know what I mean? The Macorba, like, fucking hell. And you flick it on, and as you flick it on, you just fucking hope that something doesn't go pop in front of you. Yeah, it's just, it's fucking stupid. Stupid.
How did you find, like, that kind of life at the Cobb? Because obviously it's a pretty big place with different, what would you call them? Amenities. Like, what did you get? Did you used to get around the base much? Did you? Like, how did you find it coming in and out of the desert? Like, you've got that life in the desert, then the life at the Cobb. What was that like?
Yeah, it's mega. We used to love coming back to the Cobb. Like, we would take the IDF and stuff coming in because it meant that we could go down the village and get a fucking milkshake, or go to the American PX, or play a bit of table tennis, or a little bit of normal living. You had a flushing toilet, you had running water. You had a slightly better bed than what we would have had out in the desert, but it was like luxury living in comparison to the desert. Like, we used to come back, some of us, like fucking 7-8 stone, just nothing on us. Your clothes don't fit anymore. Your body armor doesn't work properly anymore. None of it. So when we used to get back, any opportunity we got, we'd jump on a bus, go down to the village. You've got a Danish woman, civilian, serving you a thing, and like all you've seen is your mate's sweaty nutsack for the last 4 weeks. At this point, anything looks good, right? So you would have this full-blown, like, I don't know, kind of just, it was normality. Yes, you'd get smashed up every now and then with some rockets and stuff, but that was worth it because you had you could go play pool and have a fucking coffee. It was, do you know what I mean? Whereas any brew we were having in the desert, you'd have to mix up into a plastic bottle, chuck it in the sun for 10 minutes, and then you've got a warm brew. But it was out of a ration pack. Whereas I could go get a fucking latte and a pizza. So we used to love coming back to the Cobb. A lot of the time it'd be better off being there, soaking up the IDF that's coming in, just so you had a little bit of normality.
What did you do on the second half of the tour?
So that was really just patrols through Basra, downtown Basra. Normally a supporting role for people going and kicking indoors. You'd be the armoured backup for various operations, really. So more there as a supporting role for the boys and girls going in, kicking doors in. As you would have some personnel in the back where you'd go out and do like recovery. If someone's been hit with IDF or an IED or something, you'd help with some recovery, that sort of stuff. D Squadron, the other squadron in the tours, they spent their whole time in Basra on Warrior. And they were getting rounds downrange into buildings, directly up against the Jali Armada there, wasn't it? So we came in sort of halfway through what they were already doing to kind of bolster the support for them, really. But from a recovery standpoint, where we'd have maybe people in the back, because in a Bulldog, you've only got a 7.62. You've got a Jimpy at the top, that's your lot. I think maybe at one point we got the first time I'd ever seen him was the, what do you call it? The machine gun you used to have on top where you could run it from a fucking remote control.
The 50s.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, it's a 50. Sorry, it's a 50. Yeah.
Yeah, there was like a remote control 50 and
that's right,
remote control in the back.
We briefly saw that, but inevitably we were had 7.62, and as a driver, if you're head up as a driver and someone's firing 7.62 above you, those empty cases go in one place and that's straight down the back of your fucking neck. They fall into your hatch, right? So really, that was. So at that point, when we first started it, I had very recently been taken into hospital with the heat stuff again, where my kidney started shutting down and all the rest of it. So I missed a little bit of what was going on when I was having the turnaround from recovery. But on the Bulldogs and the 432 side of it, that was predominantly as backup for the Warriors, because they had the 30mm run cannon and Charlies and stuff like that. So it was just to add on to the battle group effort for going out and doing that. But it was the D Squadron boys, who's one of my best mates now, Jack. He was a driver and a warrior. And some of the stories he's got of these EFPs not quite making it through into the driver's cab and stuff like that, it's fucking nuts.
What was it like in the hospital?
Yeah, so pretty weird. Like, it was, if you watch anything like World War II type and the hospitals they had, where it's just the beds in this kind of like, do you ever do Canada when you had the 50-man rooms and those bunk beds? So it's a bit like that, but obviously not bunk beds, but you had this huge, what looked like a hangar really, and you had the individual beds in it, but there was no curtains or anything to separate them, not unless they needed to put something in. And it was just full of people that had been smashed up one way, shape or form. And they were either waiting to get flown out or they were waiting to go back to their units. So quite often used to just talk to people in there or just lay there, hope that something gets fucking squared away. There was one phone on the ward that you could use to phone home in and stuff like that. And then there was a toilet block, shower block. And that was your lot. So it was a pretty grim place to be. Wasn't fun.
And so you'd have like a mix of casualties from enemy action, heat casualties.
That's right, yeah. Or people in there that had been stung by something, bitten by something.
Yeah.
All of it, yeah.
What was the? What was the? Because obviously, on Telic 10, the British finally pulled out of Basra. Mm-hmm. Can you remember what you were doing at the time when that happened and what your thoughts were on it?
So we actually just finished pre-deployment training to go back to Iraq. This would have been.
Sorry, mate. I meant on Telic 10 when they closed Basra, Palestine.
Oh right, yeah, I'm with you. Yeah. So the only bit I remember from that is them saying there's a chance we all go home early, and that's all we were told. That's all we were told. I don't remember if we did or we didn't. I'm sure that we came back home in the October that year, so that would have been a full tour. But don't quote me on that. But all I remember is having a briefing outside the tents, and then the hierarchy saying there's a chance that we go home early, but didn't really give us explanation as to why. So at that time, I had no idea that the palace had been shut. I had no idea at all. Right. So it was only afterwards I really understood what was going on. And by that point, I was like, oh, right, what we having for Scotland?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So when you did come home then, how did you feel about leaving Iraq? How did you feel about the job that you'd done? Did you feel like you'd accomplished anything?
So I was looking forward to getting back. But yeah, I don't really feel like I did anything. If anything, I feel like I didn't do enough, because where I had gone down twice with that heat exhaustion from the desert, I feel like I had failed somewhat. I feel like I was weak. So I left wanting more. Do you know what I mean? I left wanting more. So I was pissed off actually that we'd come home early, because I was desperate to get downtown Basra and get some rounds down range and do my part, because I felt like I hadn't done my part, although I had in some way. I felt like I'd failed and kind of made not a name for myself, but if you go down with heat exhaustion, the first thing that anybody that doesn't understand is going to go, "We fucking did drink enough water, you fucking melt." So I made you a hat. What's wrong with you? I'm like, dude, I was drinking fucking 15 litres a day. Like, you can't get enough in you. But the boys that were downtown Basra every day would rather do what they were doing than do what we were doing in the desert. And that's everyone I'd spoken to was like, I'd much rather have that than what you were doing. That's fucking brutal. Because you've got to worry about both. At least with fighting, you can see what's in front of you and you just get on with it, don't you?
Did you have mates in the squadron that was in Basra?
Yeah. So when we were back at the Cobb, quite often we would be on a similar turnaround. So I'd go over to some of the D Squadron boys and we would share stories about what they'd been up to and what we'd been up to. So we kind of understood what was going on, both sides. And we wanted a taste of it and they wanted a taste of it as well. You know, when we did get re-rolled, I thought, fucking come on, here we go. I can get involved a little bit here. But I was kind of held back a little bit in that they saw me as potentially a bit of a liability with the whole heat stuff, because if I go down for a third time, I'm going home. And then they've got to try and replace me. So some lads at this point had already gone down 3 or 4 times and they've had to leave. They've been sent home. They can't get a replacement. The squadron's stretched. The troops stretched. So they couldn't take that risk. So I had more of a supporting role in that, and hence the reason I felt like I'd needed to do more. Although I'd put myself on the line more than once. You don't necessarily see it like that, do you?
So would you say, like, put it this way, would you have gone to Afghanistan? Did you have to re-sign up or extend your time? Or I'm not quite sure how it works. You know, so you went to Afghanistan in 2012, so that's 5 years later. So that would have been after your initial engagement, right?
Yeah, so I do remember going down to Med Centre and essentially having to have something signed off to say that I was fit to deploy because of what had happened in Iraq. And it was my platoon commander at the time, the boss, who basically said, he's fucking fine, he's coming. Because I said to him, look, if I don't... Essentially, I threatened to sign off. If you don't let me go, I'll sign off, I'm going. Do you know what I mean? And stupid, maybe, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't one of those things where you get lads threaten to sign off so they get a promotion. I was like, I will sign off and leave if you don't let me deploy. Fuck you, I'm going. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd done all of the pre-deployment stuff. I'd promoted twice by this point. I was now in a commanding role for the tour, and I had my boys, and we knew our job. So I was like, I am going, whether you fucking like it or not. So like, okay, fucking go. So that never actually left me. What had happened in Iraq, that never left me, even with 5 years later. So that was forgotten about as quick as it came up. But I think they had to sort of jump through the hoop and tick a box to say, yeah, he's fit. Despite the fact that nothing had happened at any point in that 5-year stretch with the cold or the heat, I still had to be signed off all the same.
Obviously, you stayed up with the battalion. Anything in that few years then, did you kind of feel like, as far as soldiering, whether you had a bit of unfinished business?
Oh, big time. And that'll lead me on nicely when you're ready for it, is to why I did what I did in Afghanistan, what happened in Afghanistan. Because it wasn't a chip on my shoulder, that's the wrong way to put it, because I didn't have a bad attitude. And I wasn't hateful towards anybody. So a few of the boys with piss taking out used to call me full spectrum warrior because I'd gone down with the heat exhaustion. I'm still kicking about and whatever else, and I laughed it off. But deep down, I was like, "Fuck you! Watch this! I'm going to be a fucking super soldier now." And it kind of lit a fire in me to prove myself and continue to prove myself. And shit bust, I had the shiniest cap badge. I had the most pristine kit. I had the shiniest boots. I was early. You know what I mean? I did not put a fucking foot wrong in any stretch. Something needed doing, I fucking did. It wasn't like I was a brown-nosed schneck. I was leading, but as a trooper, right? So then picked up quite quickly, Lance Jack, picked up even quicker than Full Screw. bank command role for the tour. So they went, oh, this dude's fucking switched on. He's a 5-year Falls group. Let's give him a multiple and he can control that in Afghanistan. So that, for me, and I'm sure you'd agree, there's no better role than Falls crew, potentially platoon sergeant. However, that senior rank comes with admin that you don't want. Right, let's be honest. You can't be asked for that fucking paperwork. It's bullshit. So Falls crew is the best amount of responsibility with the least amount of admin that there is, because you have a voice, you can express your concerns, you can get what you want, get what you need, square your boys away, but you don't have to sit through that the rest of that O group and listen to what fucking whatever captain whatever's saying. So for me, I was at the height of where I wanted to be, and what I wanted from the military. I'm now commanding. I'm multiple commander. These boys are looking at me for direction. I'm the one that's going to be planning, and that alongside then the platoon commanders. It was myself, Jack, who I've mentioned, and another guy called Neil. Us, the 3 Falls crews, and then the boss, Captain Gillespie. But unlike a lot of cavalry officers, he was genuinely one of the lads. Like, we would have the respect for him because he was a captain. We'd always call him boss. We'd never be anything else. But equally, when we are on a turnaround and we happen to be in our fob and he's asleep, we're going to fucking throw water balloons at him and fuck him up because he's one of the boys, right? So there's this real camaraderie and this real, it sounds cliche, mate, but there's real brotherhood. And I'm sure you can appreciate it. But I had made it my mission post-Iraq to prove everybody wrong, right? And so then I went through as a trooper. Then the highest jobs you can have as a trooper, as a driver, is the OC's driver, right? So now I'm driving for the officer commanding of the squadron, his vehicle. So only the best ones go there. So as a driver, might not sound like a big deal, but as between you and the rest of the drivers, you're like, fuck you, I'm the big dick. Enjoy driving for fucking, I don't know, the ambulance or whatever it might be, right? Because you're a bit of I'm not going to say the word, but you know what I'm talking about. So already now, like, tick, I'm moving. I'm making waves. I'm modeling myself on all the right people. That is going to be behind me, and I don't want anyone else to ever fucking talk about it ever again. So, and it wasn't even like, it couldn't be helped, but people had put me in a bracket with these other soldiers that in my eyes weren't soldiers. The biffs, the people that didn't really want to be there, the people that would cry about doing this, that and the other, like literally sometimes. And I'm like, I am not that fucking person. Don't you dare put me in that bracket. Watch this. So kind of, lit a fire in me, and I wasn't afraid to speak my mind. I wasn't afraid to take control. I wasn't afraid to command and speak in front of others and teach. I wasn't afraid to do any of that. So, which is that's what the army want to see from you, right? Like, I remember I went off and did, it's ironic really because I got fucking blown up, but I went and done the search team commander's course down in Chatham, the engineers place.
I'm not sure, mate.
So it's like the main engineers camp, if you will, and that's where they run all the training courses for non-engineer personnel. So I forget how long the course was, maybe like 6 weeks, something like that. So I was the search team commander for the entire squadron, me and one other guy. So it was now our responsibility to teach them ground sign awareness, teach them how to search for IEDs correctly, teach them how to search a building correctly. So that's a huge responsibility now for teaching these young boys how to do things properly. And everyone's staring at you. So I was like, this is where I want to be. And it wasn't like a power thing to say like, oh, I'm in charge. Because I'd like to think as well, if you spoke to any of my blokes, they were like, yes, Webby, like, we'd do anything for him. And it's not because I was telling them to do it. I was asking them to do it. There's a big difference. So me as a screw in my multiple, and then the sister platoon in their multiple, the screws, everyone hated them. Because they'd sit down and shout at someone else to go and do it. Whereas I would like, I'm doing this, can you boys fucking help me? Do you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't expect someone to do something I wasn't willing to do myself. And I'd lead from the front. So I had really found my feet now. I said, this is where I want to be. Like, I cannot wait to get in amongst it. You know, I wanted to have all the best of the best kit. Alieness saves lives and all that sort of good stuff is true. I stand by it. If you feel comfortable, you look comfortable, you are way more effective than if you don't feel those two things. Do you know what I mean? And that actually got me in trouble. When I did guest bands, I was wearing what they said was incorrect kit. And they tried to really fuck me for it because of the boots I had on at the time, which actually, ironically, they now issue. But there you are.
Before we get on to Afghan, mate, you kind of touched on it, so I think it might be interesting to get into a bit more. Can you tell us a bit more about like what that culture is like in a cavalry regiment, and particularly when it comes to the officers and the relationships with men?
So it's a bit hit and miss, right? In my experience, I've had both sides of it. Some people would argue that I'm wrong, but this is just my opinion and my experience personally, where I've had officers that have been complete douchebags and they want to separate themselves from being above you, because usually to be a cavalry officer, you have to have a particular background and you have to have a particular financial background. So that comes with a level of social difference. So you've got troopers there that have come from fuck all, me being one of them, I suppose. And arguably some lads even less than that. Predominantly a northern regiment when I joined, and that kind of leveled out with recruiting from the south as well. So you had, you know, your Mancunians, your Cumbrians that grafted their whole life, you know, been on the mine since 6 years old and stuff. And then you've got, as an example, this one officer in particular, I'll name him because he's a fucking knob. Captain Tyson, his dad, like, owns Cornwall or something. He's like the Prince of Cornwall, this dude. And I overheard a conversation in the squadron office once, and he was on the phone to the bank, and his bank is on the Strand. So you have to have a particular amount of money in your account at any one time to have an account there. And just a level of difference between the way we would live our lives was huge. Whereas then the flip side of that, 4 officers in particular come to mind for being on what I would say the good side of it. The boss, who I've mentioned, Mr. Gillespie, Captain Gillespie, I would do anything for that man. That dude, he is the reason I was able to deploy, and he is the reason I was able to stay out there. I'll explain why that's pertinent, but just the way he was one of us. He really was one of us. And then his other 3, and one of them I was in recruit with. He then went off and did selection twice, and eventually, for many reasons, he actually just took voluntary redundancy and left. But Captain Wythe, his name is, and we used to call him just Kent. Just wind him up, Kent. I was recruited with him, sea squadron with him, and I also did a 10-day op with him in Afghan through. It was wild. We'd been in country for fucking 5 minutes, and he come to me and said, I need you to lead 9 other men, go and pick them. But this is where you can pick them from. So basically I had to put together this multiple with 10 of us, 11 with him. We went on a 10-day op through Nadi Ali and just here and everywhere, just chaos. I couldn't even tell you what it was for. A few joint ops with the ANA, stuff like that. Just, it seemed like more of an exercise I saw as we playing at the time. We'd been in country 5 minutes, and I've had an enemy sniper come that far from taking my head clean off. And I was like, welcome to Afghanistan, here we go. But I thrived. I loved it. I actively went looking for that because I felt like that's where I was meant to be, and I was able to do my job the most effectively being under that amount of pressure. Which might sound stupid when I say it out loud, but there are many people that will understand where I'm coming from with that. You hit the 2, and there's another 2. Alex Michael is my squad leader at the time. And then one other, Quentin, his name is, from Iraq. those boys, majors and captains, were very, very different to the other cavalry officers. But I think if across the board, it would be there's a real divide between the officers and the normal people within the regiment, and vast majority of that comes from money. And you sort of,
so they're like it's kind of like aristocratic kind of.
Massive, you know, massive, mate, massive. Yeah. For example, we had the Captain Cadbury in the regiment for a long time. Right. So he basically had to join the military for 4 years in order to inherit the family fortune, the Cadbury's chocolate. He ended up doing 8 years. He was a mega soldier. He wasn't necessarily on the side of being a douchebag, but that's the background he had. So straight away, that comes with a weight anyway. He did 8 years, left, and then sold the lot to Nestle. So, you know, make that what you will. But yeah, it was a lot of separation from them to us. Yeah, which doesn't always work.
So let's talk about Afghan then, mate. What was the role? Did you deploy as a full regiment, and what was the role out there for you?
Yes, it was a full regiment, to a certain degree, at least. Anyway, our role specifically was more of an operations multiple, predominantly in Babji East. So we initially flew into Nyadullah on Route Mars, Trident, PB4, PB5, all that sort of area. Loymanda, Babji East. So that was kind of our AO, where we would go out into the local, stay out there for a period of time, right on the Helmand River there as well. And then that would be like a week out on the ground, for example. And then you get back to Nyadullah, get back to your fob, have a shower, have some decent scran or whatever. But then it very quickly came. I did that 10-day op I spoke to you about, and then it came to the point where we would just get chinooked and headed into various places within that AO and AOs close by, where we would just bolster on to other people and help them. So it was really, we were on the ground more than we weren't on the ground. Different compounds, different police checkpoints. So bent as a 9-bob note, the police, as you well know, normally off their face on something as well, be it weed or heroin. And you're trying to fight alongside these guys or do joint operations along those. It was very much third world where we were. Middle of nowhere's arsehole Helmand, where it was accepted that they would do the things that they would do to 13 and 14-year-old boys, you know, on a Thursday. And we had to just sit by and allow it, because the following morning we were doing a joint op that we couldn't risk fucking up. And we did this particular one in Poppleseye. I remember we did 2 stints up there for weeks at a time, where we went into some areas in Poppleseye from, I forget, Asmat. No, not Asmat. What was the fucking PB up there? The fob up there. Atal, PB Atal. We'd go forward then into Poppleseye, and it was areas that ISAF hadn't been for 10 years. So they were like, fuck, thank God you're here. Like, we haven't seen you for 10 years. And it was, you could feel the difference. Do you know what I mean? You could feel the difference in how that was. But that being said, we had times where sidearms were pulled in the faces of us and the police, even the interpreter. You know, rifling, pistol in our face, rifle in his face, because there's been a disagreement on how we should do things and how we should be living. Tensions boiled over. The boys have been up against it for days now, weeks, whatever it might be. And someone said something about a boy, or someone said something about whatever it is. And obviously, we're westernized. We're not fucking Neanderthals. I'm not having that. One particular patrol we were doing, and this lad, he probably 12, 13 years old, he come running up to the front of the line, tried to hand something to like the big boy police officer. He was a nasty fucker. He was proper nasty. They wouldn't think twice about shooting in the back. And this lad had said something to him. I tried to hand him to him, and he just absolutely haymakered this kid on the deck. And he's crying, holding his face, and he's obviously shouting at him, telling him to get up in Afghan. After this kid gets back up off the floor, he just open hand slaps him back down to the ground, and he's screaming at this poor kid. And I said to myself, if he hits him again for a third time, I'll just go shoot him. I'm going to pull. I've got my rifle in my hand, and obviously I've got a sidearm. I've got a SIG, and I'm just going to take a shot in. Right, but you can't obviously do that. For one, I'll be tried for murder, and rightly so. But that's the sort of tension you're having to deal with every day in how they live their lives and how we lived our lives. We weren't allowed to say to them, this is how you should do it. Despite the fact that more often than not, they knew it was wrong because they are sitting there with an iPhone in their hand. So it's not like they are not westernized. It's not like they don't understand how the world works. But because that particular area of Helmand was so third world, it was still given that you're going to just pass this poor kid around.
So by pass this poor kid around, obviously anyone that's been to Afghanistan knows what you're on about. But for those who don't, you're talking about the sexual abuse of children. Correct.
So we always, I say joke, we always talk about Man Love Thursdays where the men would essentially have sex with each other all night on a Thursday. But what became apparent whilst we were there, and I learned more about what really goes on, is that one or two boys would also be passed around. And then that became more frequent than a Thursday. And this poor kid potentially would have been abused by 3, 4, 5 men at any one point, repeatedly. And then when he becomes of age, he will then do the same to the next boy, and so on and so on and so on. And you're sharing a compound with these people. You're on one side, they're on the other. You are guarding the inside and the outside of this compound, obviously from the Taliban now, but equally from them. So I forget what time it happened, but you had to have the guardian angel, so you would have somebody looking in and somebody looking out, right? Because quite often what the Taliban were doing was infiltrating the police, and essentially they were getting them to do the dirty work for killing us. So we had that happen a few times, and I met this dude, I forget his name, but essentially he had been shot and he was laying on the floor dying and bleeding out, but he had to pretend that he was already dead to try and survive. Fortunately, he did, but no one else did. Like that shit was happening, man. So you're dealing with that. You're dealing with this abuse of children, and you've got to try and stay locked in and do your job to not slip somewhere and miss something, or do you know what I mean? So much going on, but I took it upon myself to soak all of that up so that I could allow the lads to do what they needed to do. Some of them young, first tours, and they're right in the deep end. If you don't mind, I'll tell you a story about the first IED that we found.
Yeah, just before you do, mate, I should have said this. So just so everyone knows, this is 2012.
Correct.
Herrick 16 in the summer or
summer? Yeah. So that was March through till end of October, I believe. 7 months, something like that.
Mate. Talk us through that IED, mate.
So first patrol we'd done going through a particular area that was well known for Taliban activity. It was one of the areas where famously an Apache had come down, and it was this huge fucking operation that went in to get these boys out. So we're there, and we see the locals coming. We're going through the maize fields, and the maize isn't as high as it did get at this point. It was quite early on in the tour. It's fucking one of the first jobs we did. And there's one track you could go down, and then there's a bridge at the end of it that you need to cross. There's only a handful of places across the wadi that you can get over safely, right? So that is where these devices are going to be, if there are any. Okay, so but you have to go through these areas. You can't, otherwise you don't move anywhere, do you? Right? So the locals are looking at us, frightened of us, don't want to come near us. And this one dude comes up to us and starts shouting at us for ruining his maize field. So between myself and the boss and the Terp, we were like, tell this dude we'll pay for his field, but we need to know where are the IEDs down here. We know they're there. We already know, iStar and the O group, the information we've got, the intelligence we've gathered, we know they're there, but we need to essentially confirm it, clear it, get Brimstone in, which is the engineers, and create a safe route for people coming in behind us, right? We're kind of like the vanguard, if you will. So anyway, after a lot of back and forth with this guy, he said, it's fucking, this is there, but I've got to go because they're watching. And we always used to get that. They wouldn't talk to us for any more than 2 or 3 minutes because the Taliban were watching. If they get caught talking to us, they just kill them and their family, right? So we're like, okay, in not so many words, sound, cheers, mate. Here's fucking $20, disappear. So on that particular day, my point man was a lad called Jack Lomax, still one of my absolute best mates now. He was 18 at the time, literally fresh-faced, have a shave on the way to work by sticking his head out the window, sort of thing. He was point man, so now it's on him. I can see his face drop, thinking this is now real. I could see that he was worried and he was panicking a little bit. Although he wouldn't say it, I could get a reading. I'm quite good at reading people. I mean, I made it my job to do that with what we were doing in Afghanistan, right? So I became good at it. So I said to him, look, I'll come with you, which isn't actually what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go X amount of meters away, all of you take the prone position, and essentially the drill is if somebody's going to go pop, it's the person that's at the front, you can clean it up and you're still operational, right? Which is not how I worked. So when I needed to, I did it how they wanted me to do it. And when I was out there on my own, this is how I'm doing it. Tell me if you agree or not, and we'll figure it out. But so what I did was I pushed the rest of the lads back and to the safe spot. Me and him searched our way up to where we needed to cross. And I said to him, look, I'm right behind you. So if you're going to go pop, I'm going to go pop with you. And I don't want you to take that as worry even more. I want you to take that as that's how confident I am in you that you've got this. Does that make sense? I know how good you are. So believe it. I'm right fucking here to prove how good you are. And all of a sudden he just went, ah. And he fucking found it in about 30 seconds. Right? So I was like, told you. Okay. So what we then had to do was obviously mark it, do all the drills you have to do in order to be able to get that cleared, put it up got on the net, fired it up, X amount of time later, brimstone come out, boom, blow it up, and we fucking on our way. And we'd made the area safe for the locals there now too. But the most important take from now was Lomax now was operating freely. He wasn't worried anymore. He wasn't timid about anything. He knew I had his back, and he knew that I had the utmost confidence in him to be able to do his job properly. And yeah, he went on to find many, many, many more after that.
Is it fair to say that IEDs will, like, you get some tours where people, it's like a bit of a shooting tour with Taliban popping up everywhere, firefights, and then you get other tours where it's this kind of cat and mouse IED game. Was yours more towards the IED thing, or was it a bit of mix?
Yeah. So it was a mix depending on what op you're doing and when. So I had a fair amount of both, but the multiple as a whole was leaning more to the side of the cat and mouse game, right? They were always watching us. They were always paying attention to how we did our drills. So the tour, I experienced both sides of it, very much firefight kinetic, but also the IEDs, cat and mouse side of it. But the multiple as a whole, it was more cat and mouse IEDs with pop shots here and there. A couple of really big incidents towards the latter end of the tour, but it was just operating with one hand behind your back, knowing you're being watched, and there's not a great deal you can do about it, because this is shortly after Sergeant Brown's incident. So it was, if you don't PID it, we're coming for you. Right? So I tried to say to my boys, you fucking shoot first and I'll back you up later. So long as you're not being an absolute dickhead, because if you are, I'm not going to help. Well, I'm not helping you. But if you strongly believe that you were right, and believe me, you were right, shoot first, ask questions later. Because I'm not... The problem we had was the younger lads, certainly, that kind of their first tour, or even the younger lads that have been in for a few years but hadn't had any experience whatsoever. It was, well, I'm just going to sit here and soak it up. I'm too afraid to shoot back in case someone tries to fuck me in court. Which is, you can't operate that way. It's so dangerous. So I made it clear from the outset that, boys, I trust all of you are going to make the right decision. Shoot first, ask questions later. Do you know what I mean?
What was the Sergeant Brown incident, mate?
I may have put his name on there, but do you remember when he came about that? So he had been sent to prison for murder.
Oh, Marine A, was it?
Marine A.
Yeah.
So I'm friends with Marine C.
Right.
So I've had kind of first-hand experience of what really happened. And I'm not for any minute, for any second, I'm not justifying what happened, where essentially he, in the court, he had murdered this member of the Taliban. But just for a second, I'll paint you the picture. This was his 6th operational tour in Afghanistan. This was the latter stages of that particular tour, which was very, very kinetic, same areas that we were operating in, Loimander, etc. And they had literally just been mortared by these particular people. Their fob had just been hit. Someone had been fucked up. They managed to get some of these on their way out. Anyway, found this member of the Taliban half dead, and the kind of SOPs are you're supposed to treat, trying to help this person. But instead what he said was, roll off that mortar coil, you cunt, and then put one in it. Turned around to his boys and said, now I've just broken the Geneva Convention there, no one say a word. However, the attached arm was a member of the REME who had a chest cam or a helmet cam on and recorded the whole fucking thing. Anyway, the only reason that video even surfaced was because that particular person had his laptop confiscated by the RMPs because there was word that he was anonymous. So they confiscated that to look through his videos, found that video, and the whole world fucking exploded, and they clamped down on Marine A big time. Eventually, obviously, he was acquitted and released because of the accidental circumstances of what had been going through and what had happened. But that kind of set the precedent for everyone else. And it just went full send on the whole card alpha thing, card 429, 429 Bravo, all the rest of it. So it's designed to protect you, but clearly it doesn't protect you. So that's where where that came from, is everybody worrying about getting themselves in trouble when, even if they have done the right thing.
Can you remember the first time that you were contacted by small arms and the first time you kind of got rounds down?
So it was on this op at the beginning of the tour. We had been tasked with clearing this row of compounds. There were some people in there that we didn't want to be in there anymore, and this was supposed to be a ANA-led strike op or patrol. So we're in the back of Mastiffs now, just as a dismount multiple. One of the officers I mentioned before, Captain Webb, he was on top cover. We were the first vehicle, we're the lead vehicle. The driver stops and says, I can see something ahead in the road. Looks a bit suspicious. We need to clear that because that was our route into these compounds. So we stop short. I jump out with my point man of the day, who is brand new to the regiment. Similar to my time in Iraq, he'd been with the regiment like a year and 18 months. all of a sudden, he stood there with a fucking metal detector in his hand in Afghanistan. So his name, we called him Two Dads. He had a double-barreled last name, so Two Dads is the classic go-to, right? So Two Dads, you and me, mate, come on. And his face dropped, thinking, fuck. I was like, dude, don't worry. I'm right here with you. I'll talk you through what we need to be doing. But we need to clear this particular route up to that point to get... We've got the entire convoy behind us now. I can't remember how many vehicles, it was a lot. So I was like, come on, dude, we've got to move. So we get to the front of this wagon, and I'm explaining to him what I need to do, what needs to happen, how we need to do it. And then contact right, small arms. So we peel back and we sit behind the wagon. So we're behind this Mastiff, that's here behind us. And in front of us are these big row of compounds. But we're now behind what will become Poppy. So it was quite high at this point. It was probably about 4 or 5 feet. So if you take a knee, you have cover behind the Poppy. It stops. So I was like, okay, let's move. We've got top cover from the boss. He's on the Gympie or 50 cal, whatever. I forget what we had. I think it was a Gympie. So we take one step out and then bang, contact right again. So fuck. Okay, we need to clear this route. We need to, because now we're sitting ducks. So we get on our belt buckles and I explain to him again, but I'm not going to do this for him. This lad needs to understand that he's capable of doing this, because if he doesn't do it now, he's now no good to you. And that, like, to sound brutal, he needs to do it because it's just the right thing to do to be effective moving forward, right? So we're getting our belt buckles. You can still search whilst you're on your belt buckle. So we do that. We get to the front of the vehicle. We're starting to clear it. We clear the area that was of concern. And as we're trying to get back, we get contact left and right. So contact left from the compounds that we're now, that's the area of interest that we want to be putting a strike up in on. So we start coming back. And I can't see any of where these firing points are. But the boss is trying to PID it for me. Bear in mind the whole PID thing I was talking about. So I can't fire because I know there's women and children kicking about. So if I just start aimlessly firing back to the general direction, which technically I should do, there's women and children up there, and I'm going to be hung out to dry. So if I'm thinking that, the young lads are thinking the same thing. There's only me and one other boy. There was a boy. It's only me and one other lad that's out there at the moment. Everyone else is still mounted. So you have the top cover and us. We peel back, and I say to Two Dads, go round me. So he runs round me back into the vehicle because we're still getting fired out here. And now I get one other lad jump out who's got a little bit of operational experience. He was Royal Welsh. He jumps out and says to me, where's the firing point? And I say, it's that way. I can't see it. If I stick my head up for too long, I'm a sitting duck and I can't see where it's coming from. The boss can't quite see it yet either. He's now trying to get rounds down range to a general direction. I still can't fucking find where it is. And all of a sudden, I'm taking a knee. I'm at the back of the vehicle. This dude, the other guy I mentioned, is maybe 5-6 meters away from me to my left. And I hear this huge bang right next to my head. And I went, fuck, what was that? And I looked at, his name was Shipley. I looked at him and he looked at me. And I was like, what the fuck are you firing at? Show me where it is. He says, it's not me. And I look like that. And I see this big hole in the Mastiff next to me, next to my head. And as I see that, so the second round comes in, splashes on the dirt right next to my left knee in the middle of me and Ships. That's when I realise it's an enemy sharpshooter, sniper, whatever it might be. What he's done, this particular person, missed my head left. He's overcorrected, missed right, which only means one thing. The third round's going to be on target. So I say, fucking get in, move. And he runs around the back of the vehicle now. And as I dive in, and as I dive into the vehicle, I'm laughing at this point as well. I think, fucking hell, boys, that was close. Sparked up a fag. And as I've done that, so all fury has been unleashed behind me from the ANA with just about every single weapon system you could imagine. And they just drive through the fucking Poppy and put this, just flatten these compounds with certainly civilians in there. There had to be, unless they somehow got the fuck out of Dodge. But that tipping point for it was the enemy sharpshooter. That was what sort of sparked. They realised what it was, and obviously we gave the command then to go. But I didn't even manage to get a round down range at that point because I couldn't see precisely where it's coming from. And the information we had was there's women and children here. They're using them as their sort of armor. They're using them as a way of not being contacted by us, if that makes sense. Whereas the A&A just went, not us, mate. Have it. So that was chaotic. But I remember a particular time where we were having to put, essentially, the word came as go and poke the hornet's nest. So that actually, there was a piece written about this particular time. Go and poke the hornet's nest. And I remember being contacted from our right-hand side. It was behind a compound wall, maybe like 70, 80 meters away. And I remember turning and looking and seeing 3 different colour turbans and with dish dash we call it, wouldn't we? But outfit, whatever you want to call it. Blue, black, and white. And I remember them popping up behind this wall and behind trees like that whack-a-mole game. Going up, down, up, down, up, down. And every time I come up, you just take a shot at it. And then they'd either come back up or they wouldn't come back up. So if they didn't come back up, chances are you managed to hit this fucker in the face. And that was more like I'm shouting at the chimpy gun out, keep going, keep going, keep going. There's a lot of people in the open. We need to get to cover. We can't get into this particular compound because we know it's riddled with IEDs. So we've got a dog with us trying to search the safe lane. Blokes are in the open. I'm thinking, fucking hell, I know his wife. I've got to get him out of Dodge. And it was just this weird, like, slow motion thing of I'm playing whack-a-mole game, whack aliens or whatever that fairground game. And if they don't put back up, you've got your mole. Do you know what I mean? And that was really surreal. As if this, and I didn't even think about like, oh, you've just shot that dude. It's like, oh, that part of the game's done. Right, where's the next one? And I think you have to switch off from it that way. Because if you don't, you'll drive yourself crazy with what you're doing. Because ultimately it's, without not to make it sound like Hollywood, but it's kill or be killed, isn't it? You know, get rounds down range, whether you hit them or not, or as chances are they wouldn't think twice about slit your throat. So, you know, that was later on down the line where I think I probably realised then the PID was less important than what they were telling us it was. Kind of using us as bait in a way. But it's very strange feeling knowing what you're doing and treating it like a game.
But yeah, I mean, that's the training, right? That's the folding plate training to kind of make it that instinct. You mentioned the Royal Welsh lad. Were you working with the Royal Welsh, or was he someone from the Royal Welsh that joined KRH?
Yeah, so we shared the fob with them. I want to say it was the Welsh Guards, but when we did, the blokes were top. They were really, really good blokes, and sharing some living quarters with them as well was very, very cool. And some of them had done 4 tours already as well, so you know they were long in the tooth of how this country operates and why. And I kind of, speaking to the boys that were more experienced, I just made myself a sponge and took from them what was necessary for sort of success on my side. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely, mate. So is there anything else notable that you want to speak about before we get to your incident?
Just trying to think of, there's quite a lot of sort of similar things really in what was happening in the country. I suppose, I think one thing I would mention actually is with the maize fields, when you're operating within areas where that is, the reason I want to mention is because when it's fully grown and some 6 to 10 foot tall, it's super, super thick in there as well. It's like twice as hot inside that maize field as it is outside that maize field. But more importantly, you have to walk hand on shoulder with the person in front of you, and inevitably you'll have 2 or 3 shotguns in that patrol because the Taliban can walk the other way 6 feet away from you and you can't see them. It's like Vietnam in there. That's how I would imagine Vietnam would be, where you're in the huge growth of the jungle and stuff. And it's similar that the heat the humidity in there. You're pouring with sweat. You can't see 6 foot in front of you, and you're trying to operate within that, because sometimes you've got no choice but to go through it. And quite often you'd have people walking the other way that's most likely Taliban, and you just have to stand and be still, because if you come into contact with them, it's chaos. That's the last place you need to have a firefight and have casualties, is in there, because you can't see what you're doing. It's chaos.
So let's talk about the day that you got whacked, mate.
Yes, mate. So it was June 6th, 2012. So D-Day, funnily enough. And what we had been tasked to do, and I quote, was, "We are going bomb hunting." So I had been in an O group. It was led by the boss, this one, so it wasn't down to me what was happening, but I had made myself present for what I needed to know, and then it was down to the boss then to deliver the information as he saw necessary. So when I got the instruction, first thing I said was, "That is not a tasking for us. That's not a tasking for my blokes. That's not. It should have been a brimstone asset, really, with the engineers, because this particular route was very, very important for future operations. We needed that route at all times. At the bottom of said route was areas of interest for, where high value targets would be, or IED factories, IED makers. So that needed to be clear, and it wasn't clear for very obvious reason, from protection from their side. We had iStar assets, and intelligence suggests that they had planted fresh IDs within the area. Go and fucking clear it. So I was like, that's not for... Anyway, I'm only a fool's crew. This is coming from Captain Tyson, the douchebag, Prince of Cornwall I mentioned earlier in the podcast. We're going bomb hunting. I was like, fuck, okay. Now, I wasn't actually supposed to be on that patrol. It was my rotation to be back at the FOB. But because I was the search team commander, what we were going to do, and potentially at the end of it, we've searched in buildings and stuff, they needed me to be on it to lead that side of it. So I said, yeah, no drama. So off we went. We get flown in. We start moving early doors. We get to the particular area of question. And the first thing I say to my point man, who was Brownie, is, look, dude, it's very likely something's going to be here on this particular side here. Let's just go easy. Let's go careful. So what happened? Sorry. Oh, the dog's just come running in.
Sorry, mate.
So
we've got pets in.
Yeah. So
emotional support animals, mate. They know that the big story's coming up.
That's it, mate. So I said to him, look, let's just go easy, take it slow. We've got time. Don't worry about it. So we created a safe lane first off, and we got to a space on the right hand side of this track where there was very clear ground sign. So as I do, let's go slow here. Let's do what we need to do. So I peeled back slightly. He went prone. Literally 30 seconds less before this confirmed. I was like, fuck, right, okay. So we now start going into the drills of what comes next after you do confirm an IED. So I now walk up the safe lane with a camera, and I have a quick conversation with Brownie to say, right, we need to mark this correctly, spray paint, silence, all that. Take pictures, because fucking Johnny age 5 with a crayon is not going to be a clear picture of what is going on here with when the engineers come in to clear it. The more information we can give to them, the quicker this goes away, and we can get on with the task at hand, right? They can get back to their fucking aircon, wherever they're going to be. We can get on with the mission that we need to accomplish. So he stands up, and bear in mind, we've been up and down this safe lane now quite a few times between us. He says to me, Rick, I can see something else at the bottom of this track on the opposite side, potentially. And I said, tell you what, mark it, but avoid. because they're going to sweep this whole area when they come in anyway. You don't need to get your face in amongst that unnecessarily. Mark it as potential device, ground sign, whatever you want to call it. Mark it, avoid it. I've got it down in my notes, or I'll put it down in my notes. The boss is on the net now. He's going to make this. He's putting the 9-liner up and all the rest of it. Yeah. So as I say this, we're face to face. As I say this, I say to him, go mark and avoid that. I'm going to put the sign in here so that the spray paint from the safe lane doesn't get blown. If it gets blown away, the engineers can still see what they're looking at, right? No sooner as we do that and one of us steps out, bang, a third device goes off. But I don't know at this point what that was. My initial reaction was, which fucking dickhead was that? I thought someone had thrown a grenade. All these things go through your mind immediately. I was like, someone's getting that. Someone's getting it. Who fucked up? I was about to give them both barrels, right? And then I find myself right next to this first IED that Brownie's just found, thinking, fuck, what was that? Like, it felt like something had gone in my sternum. Winded me a little bit. I was like, Jesus, okay, now I know what that was because there's dust and shit everywhere. And then all of a sudden, the next thing I hear, and this happened immediately, but to me, it felt like it was 5 minutes. The next thing I hear is this sound that is a cross between a newborn baby crying and a squealing pig. And it was Brownie. He'd been hit. He had his rifle in his hand, and that rifle had turned to shrapnel and just shredded through parts of it. So then click, contact IED. So I look up, I shout down the line to the blokes, man down, man down, man down. And the drill at this point, as we get taught, is you stay where you are because there's a very strong chance there's other IEDs around. And if you start running around, chances are you might land on another one, trigger another one, and all of a sudden you're looking at mass casualties, and it's a bit hairy, right? Or it's the risk reward, and you run at it. So split second, I ran at it. I ran straight to Brownie. I dragged him. He was kind of like half off of this mound, if you will. He was half on, half off. So I dragged him over, rolled him over. I looked at him and I said, don't worry, mate. I fucking got you. And I'm shouting for the medic to come up to me, but he's kind of frozen. He won't move. Fortunately, we're not under fire at this point. So I look at Brownie and it looks as though someone has taken a sledgehammer to his hand and his arm. It looks proper. It's just like, it's mashed. It looks minging. I can see through his hand. It's honking. Fingers are missing and shit. And I didn't know where else there was. So I'm dealing with what I can see immediately in front of me. And at this point, I don't know if there's other injuries anywhere else. But what I do know is that he's looking at me and he's with me. Right? So there's nothing immediately concerning in terms of he's bleeding out somewhere else right now. And I made that sort of assessment quite quickly. As I'm trying to get access to his med pouch, just the drill is you use that person's med pouch so that then when you remain on the ground, you're not down any med kit, that person's left is. As I do that, Finn, one of my very, very best friends, comes running up beside me now, which again, he shouldn't do. And he's like, are you okay? Puts his hand on my shoulder, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine, dude. But he's low-key panicking. He's shouting at me and he's like a foot away from me. So I was like, he's panicking. I've got Brownie potentially bleeding out somewhere, but he's pretty fucked up, screaming still. And I've got Finn now next to me fucking panicking, but he's in an area that's quite dangerous because we know there's other IEDs kicking about. So I was like, fuck, I need to get control of this dude now too. So I get a hold of him and I say, calm the fuck down. You're right next to me. Give him morphine. Right, give him a job to do. So I take the morphine out of Brownie's pouch. I said, I sort of hit him into his chest and I said, give him that, calm the fuck down. He's like, I don't know how to do it. It's like, all you've been doing is practicing morphine for fucking 6 months before we deployed. You know what you're doing. there's instructions, read it, calm. Right, so then he pulls open this coffin of morphine, starts reading the instructions out loud. I'm like, dude, calm the fuck down. You're okay. Calm down. Just chill. You're going to be fine. Make sure his pocket's empty. Give him the morphine. I'm trying to work on it there. All at the same time, I'm still shouting to the medic, which isn't cutting. So I take it upon myself to get the tourniquet out, first aid dressing, all that. I'm patching Brownie up. I'm putting the first aid dressing on, trying to put things back where I think they need to be in order to try and save it, and hopefully they can do something with it back at Bastion or wherever. At this point, Lomax, the other point man I spoke to you about, he's searching his way to us, which is the correct thing to do. And he took it upon himself to start doing this. The boss is on the net, firing all this information across, obviously, Wigan and your Pedro or Mer, wherever it might be. So I said to then Finn, after giving the morphine, I wrote M0913 on Brownie's cheek. We need to get him the fuck out of here. Where's the HLS? And then one of the other lads, Josh, he had searched and cleared an area where the helicopter can come in. So I said, get him up, we need to move. So I rolled Brownie over again. Someone else now got a stretcher out, which is just a poncho. It was a bad stretcher. We can't carry that sort of stuff on the ground for that sort of time. Stick him on a stretcher, pick him up, and I'm running. And then another guy, Neil, put his arm on me and said, Rick, are you okay? You are on top of it. And I said, mate, I'm fine. And as I got to the HLS, this is seconds later, I put Brownie down and I just went, oh, man down, gone. I think the adrenaline, I suppose, had worn off at this point because I'd gotten my boys out of harm's way, or initial harm's way, and I knew that they were safe at that point. The Pedro was en route. It was literally minutes out. So I just fell over. My legs just went like jelly and I hit the deck. And I've sort of gone, fucking hell, what's going on? You know, not really understanding what's happening. I can't think clearly. And I just had this huge pain, like, wasn't my pelvis, but it was in that area, like kind of like left side, my lower back, kind of pelvis-y, I suppose, in a way, like this pressure. And immediately I thought, oh, internal bleeding. They teach you about this. If you feel that pressure in there, you've got internal bleeding, like you're in fucking trouble, mate. So the first thing I randomly said was check my dick, right? Matty, another lad, Matty, checked everything. No, you're sound, mate. You're good. But I was unaware of what my heart rate and stuff was doing. I don't know if my body was going into shock or what it was. But then I became the priority. I didn't know this until a long time after, when a lot of people had said a lot of things about me in what was happening. And I'll come to that shortly. But I only found this out later down the line when people were having to speak on my behalf, that I became the priority casualty in that scenario because of what my essentially my organs were doing, what my body was doing, shutting down. So the next thing I know, we have two Pedros come in. One flies straight over the top of us really low to clear the route, as you know. And then the second one comes in on top of you, right? And then you've got these Marines come running out, US Marines coming out, alley as balls. I remember I met one dude that had like 9 pistols on his chest rig. And we were like, what the fuck's that for? And all he said to us as he's running back into the abyss, like just shining into the sunset, was, no time to reload. And I'm like, you alley motherfucker, marry me. Right? Anyway, these Marines come out, grab a hold of me and Brownie, shove us in the back of this Pedro. Do you want pain relief? That's all I remember hearing. And then I don't remember much from there then to Bastion. But apparently from Bang to Bastion was 42 minutes or something like that. Is how long from the ID going off to then me and Brownie being in the care of Roll 3 and Bastion was 42 minutes. I don't know where I heard that, who told me. So if anybody is listening that knows, please do tell me if I'm wrong. But that seems about right, because it all seemed to happen quite quickly. I briefly remember looking up. I was on a spinal board with a neck brace on at this point. I remember that. I remember being on the ambulance coming from where the helis come in to the hospital. I remember just loads of doctors and nurses looking over the top of me, going through what they're going through, right? And all I was saying was, where's Brownie? Where's Brownie? Then I remember laying in this bed thinking, what the fuck's just happened? I've got blood on me, don't know if it's mine or not, covered in shit, obviously from being dragged around, the helicopter coming in, the explosion itself, all that. Brownie is, I think at this point, still in surgery, squaring him away. So I was very aware now of what had happened. And I'm trying to come to terms with what's going on. And the first thing I thought about was, they're going to try and send me home because of what just happened. But I still had all my stuff. I still had, as in, no legs missing, no arms missing. I've looked at it and I've gone, I'm fucking fine. Don't worry about me. I felt like I've been hit by a bus or a train. You know, couldn't stand up properly, thinking, fucking hell, my insides hurt, and I've still got this weird feeling in my pelvis hip area. A young medic, I suppose, come up to me and said, you okay, do you want anything? And the first thing I said was, a fag and a brew, please. So she helped me get out the back of this hospital, rolled a cigarette for me and got me a brew. And I remember sitting on this chair. I didn't have my boots on at this point. I think I was just had socks on. And all of my shit was missing. I usually keep a 20 deck of fags in my left mat pocket, but that had all gone. Everything had gone. Whether it had been taken off me or whether it had been sort of like blown off in the blast, I don't know. Brownie had bits and pieces missing off of his person from the blast, so who knows? And from that point there, I was able to go back into the hospital and see Brownie. He'd come out of surgery. So me and him were kind of talking, saying what the fuck was going on, like trying to figure out if we had done something wrong, what it was. And it later transpired that looking at the footage, one of us, don't know who, but one of us had triggered the pressure plate in the safe lane. So, and then offset from the pressure plate was the IED itself. So imagine I'll try and paint a picture for people listening, like a elongated road hub. Okay, so you've got like a slope up, flattens out, slope down. That's kind of how the ground looked, but Afghan-like. Along the front of that mound, the front bit, was 3 IEDs, one either side, which was smaller, and then one main one in the middle. And it was designed for like a jackal or a police vehicle, something like that. So then the wheel would hit the pressure plate, the IED go off underneath the belly of the vehicle. And if that didn't do its job, the driver and commander getting out, or whoever getting in and out, would then trigger the smaller IEDs, the anti-personnel IEDs, either side of that one in the middle, if you're with me. And that was replicated now 2 more times. So the flat piece of the track and the slope away from you. So there was 9 IEDs in total in this one. I don't know, I might get this wrong, but like 20 meter square box, 10 meter square box, 9 of them. And I managed to get my hands on the Brimstone report from the incident, because obviously Brimstone still had to come in and clear this route. And they were saying that the IEDs they found were some of the first they'd seen where there was little to zero metal content in these things whatsoever. So hence the reason our metal detectors didn't pick up what was in there. Okay, so the first piece you had was the Valen, and the second piece you had was the Horn, or the Horn 2. The Horn 2 specifically, which we were using, was designed to pick up anomalies in the ground, so non-metal pieces in the ground, which is what we were starting to see. However, this one in particular, the only metal in it was 2 speaker wires in the pressure plate. The rest was all plastic, rubber, whatever, wood. But they had realised that if they bury these things in a particular way, you have a scale on this horn of, I forget what it was, maybe like 0 to 8 or 0 to 10. And if it doesn't come above 2 on that scale, you don't stop and search, because it could just be a rock, it could be a water bottle. Again, similar to Iraq, is if you stop every single time, you're never going to get anywhere. And you're also a sitting duck. So in particular, something came up. Brownie asked me to check it. And I went over it. And I said, probably just a rock or a bottle, mate. Ignore it. But it wasn't. It was the pressure plate. Later transpired that was the pressure plate. So that's now on me. Because I didn't overrule. We both came to the conclusion, but ultimately I'm the commander. And I said, don't worry about it. It's 2. Don't need to worry about it. Which isn't wrong. When you look at it, it isn't wrong. We've done that many, many times and it wasn't anything. This particular time it was. And essentially, that IED was actually huge. However, it only partially detonated. Because the HME, the homemade explosive in it, was damp where they had only just planted it. So had that had fully detonated, as it should have done, we'd be pig missed, because that thing was for a vehicle. It was huge. And then you had another 8 IEDs on top of it, which probably would have daisy chained. And that whole area, there'd be nothing left of me and Brownie, right? So, to go back to my point I made earlier about why Mr. Gillespie, the boss, Captain Gillespie, is everything to me and what I owe him, is because I sat in Bastion and I said, I'm fine. They were like, no, we need to send you back. You've been involved. I'm like, get him on the phone. Get whoever you need to on the phone. I'm not fucking going back. In my head, Iraq came back of what had happened to me there and what happened to me after that and how I was with it. The rest of the blokes came into my head. What it means me not being there, what I want to achieve in terms of bringing them all home. And more importantly, I had said that's fine, don't worry about it. With the horn, the reading on the thing. Mm-hmm. So if there was 1% of me that was able to go on and finish this thing, I was going to fucking finish this thing. So they didn't run any more tests on me. They didn't do anything on me. They just agreed to send me back to my unit. So I went from roll-free Bastion, then back to where the carriage were within Bastion before you fly back out to your FOBs or your AO, stuff like that. Got put into this bed space in a room with, I forget who it was now. One of the other lads that I know anyway, who was kind of, the rear echelon lads and stuff. Still in absolute shit state because I was in a bad way at this point. Physically I felt fucking awful. And then mentally I felt even worse. But all I wanted to do was get back to the boys. I didn't want to be there. I needed to get back to the boys. So I think it was like 15 hours later, I was back in night. 15 hours after that point. So I think it was like 2 days I was gone for. And I managed to get on a random Chinook with other people, the first available opportunity to get back to Naidullah, where my boys were, having finished that patrol, finished that operation, and they were now back on their 2-day turnaround for the next op. They had no idea I was coming back. They thought I was going home. The boss hadn't said anything to them. And I remember walking back into my tent, and the first person I saw was Finn, and he just fucking burst into tears, coming at me. Sorry, mate. Just said, "Are you all right?" I was like, "I'm fine. We're good. I'm here. Let's fucking finish. Need to fucking finish this." So I had maybe 2 or 3 weeks of kind of running things from the back, not running things, but help run things from the background where I physically just couldn't put weight on my back and walk. There was so much pain within my left side. Eventually, between myself, the boss, and a very good friend of mine, staff sergeant from who's a medic running the med center in Naidullah, just fucking fed me whatever medication I get my hands on. I don't really know what it was. Nothing too crazy and strong, but between that and just double checking that I'm not falling apart from the inside out, I managed to get back on the ground and command further operations and in getting back in the ship with the boys and Every now and then, my left side would just collapse on me, like my hip would fall out almost. Not really understanding what's going on. Couldn't sleep my left side. A lot of pain, but I fucking grizzed it because I was like, I'm here. I will not be a liability. I will bring all my blokes home and I will fucking finish this because I'm not having the same scenario as what happened before. So nothing changed for me. I didn't become a liability. I led from the front. Situation, no change. If anything, I was better. However, when it all finished, when the tour came to a close, and we were starting to turn around to leave, that's when I kind of started thinking, like, something ain't right here. Like, this hurts a lot. Like, my left side keeps collapsing on me. My back goes all weird. Like, I can't lift my left foot up properly. Something's clearly not right. But when I didn't have that weight of expectation or the weight of what I put on myself more than anything, I spoke to the med centre again and they were like, right, the second you get back to the UK, you need to go straight to the med centre and they'll then send you straight to Salisbury Hospital. I was like, okay, fine. So we got back. I'm limping about. Fucking, it's getting worse and worse as the days have gone by, leading up to us coming home. We got back home, and the first thing that following morning, I went to the med centre. They were like, yes, you need to go to the hospital because they've got to do some scans and stuff like that. So I went to Salisbury Hospital and I saw Colonel Dunn straight away. He was like one of the leading plastic surgeons and orthopedic surgeons for the war injuries clinic from Iraq and Afghanistan. And he put me on his bed and he took my clothes off and shit. He was searching over and he was saying, does it hurt here? You know, all that sort of, doing a full assessment of me. And he said to me, how did you walk in here today? I said, with a bit of a limp. He said, no. How? I was like, what do you mean? I said, it hurts, but I mean, I've got in here. He said, has anyone ever told you you have a broken hip? I was like, no. What are you talking about? I was like, no. So anyway, fast forward now to having had all these assessments, these scans and all this other stuff. Essentially, my hip, with the ball joint and the bit that goes at the top of it here, half of the top of my socket is damaged, but I had a crack going through the ball joint of my hip. So what had happened was I was stood on the front slope of that ground, and when the IED went off, it pushed my left side up, but my right side stayed where it was. And what had happened is it had pushed my femur into my hip, broken my hip, but what had happened with the reason I kept getting a drop foot and my leg would just give way and my back and pelvis was hurting was because it had gone through my sciatic nerve, and then my sciatic nerve got stuck inside that break in my hip. But I did 3 more months in Afghanistan with a broken hip and a slightly severed sciatic nerve. Right? Now people say, how the fuck did you do that? Or that's bullshit. They would have seen it at Bastion, blah, blah, blah. But they didn't do any full checks on me in Bastion like that. No, they didn't do any. Partly because I was like, fucking, I'm fine. I'm walking. I'm fine. And they were like, okay, we've got people coming in left, right and centre. This dude's walking wounded. Fuck him off. Which is right. And then you get the people, well, why don't you sue for medical negligence? And I was like, right, hold on. You want me to be that guy that sues the world's leading medical professionals in the world's leading hospital that do all that good for the men and women coming through Bastion from Afghanistan. You want me to be that guy that fucking sues them? Not happening. I'm not going to be that person that undoes all that good and be the shit stain of that tour. So I was like, no chance. I'm not fucking doing that. So you can argue there was medical negligence. You can argue it was negligence on my side, on my half, for not speaking up. You can argue many things. You could argue I might even have my leg now if I hadn't have done what I'd done. However, like I said to you, the Iraq stuff, the desire and the need to be with my men and to finish that tour was more important to me than anything. Right? Which sounds selfish too. Thinking about I had a daughter at home at the time, but I was so determined to be that leader and finish that tour. And it's the absolute best time of my life was out there in terms of doing something, not for the greater good, but life is very simple over there. The only thing you're worried about is not fucking dying. Right? Don't get shot, don't get blown up. It's very simple, it's very easy. Like there's no outside noise. It's just you doing what you're doing. Feed yourself, clean yourself, be operationally fit, play some cards, have a fucking laugh. But there was many times out there post IED where I did think, fuck, something might be drastically wrong here. Fuck it, be all right. I was 25. Didn't really give a shit. Let's fucking find a way about it. So the reason people have spoken behind my back about me is because there was the trouble is, one of the medical officers at the time that was in the regiment, outside of dealing with me, she was dealing with another part, but she questioned my integrity and questioned if any of these things are real, and essentially called me a blagger, right? Which then started to fall down into other people's minds and other people's mouths to suggest that I'm faking it to try and, get sympathy or get attention or money. I don't know. So that really fucking hurt because I was being severely punished by the regiment, by my peers, for what I thought was doing the right thing and the honourable thing to fucking... Can you imagine if I compared it to something in World War II? How many blokes carried on the fight when they were injured? Some worse than others. I'm not trying to compare my injury to World War II. What I'm trying to compare is the mindset I had that I'm going to fucking fight to the absolute bitter end here for my country, for the man to my left, the man to my right, for what's behind me at home, all that sort of stuff. And instead, I got called a fucking blagger. I'm like, are you fucking mad? I cut me now and I bleed green, right? And somebody or a few people had the absolute audacity to question my integrity that I was blagging it. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, you can't blag the injuries that I'm now showing you. The surgeons and all these medical professionals that are the leading people in their field, they don't just take limbs off for the crack. They don't just remove a leg because I've asked for it to be removed. Are you actually okay? Do you know what I mean? Like, so I got quite fucking bitter about it all for a while and kind of felt hard done by, and that people didn't think I was genuine. And I thought I was doing the right thing, and I would love to see someone else do what I did, or those people do what I did. Do you know what I mean?
So what was the reason they had to take your leg?
So where the sciatic nerve had got stuck, a very similar thing that had happened to the perineal nerve down by my knee. So the lower half of my leg essentially wasn't working. So I was getting drop foot. I had to have a brace on. But it wasn't really the drop foot was the issue. It was more the nerves in there where they weren't really receiving anything. So the only way it was interpreted was with pain. So if I went outside and the wind blew on my leg, it was properly painful on the surface. So the question came to me from a surgeon called Miss Alex Crick, and she's done the last 15, 16 of my operations. What sort of quality of life do you want? So keep the leg, this is your quality of life right now. These medications to take in, this brace, this and this. Or we take your leg below the knee and potentially your quality of life looks like this and this. And I was like, it's a fucking no-brainer. Whip it off. I literally immediately was like, if you think that's the best thing to do, then clearly that's the best thing to do. You're good at what you do. Do you know what I mean? I am in your hands now. So anyway, initially I was only below knee. Through similar problems, similar issues, I had to go then through the knee. And then again, similar issues. I'm now above knee. And we seem to have got to a point now where it's kind of just, I need another operation soon to do a nerve and muscle graft, but that's kind of something that's going to happen as I move forward, whether I like it or not, a lot of the time. I'm going to need other bits and pieces as I get older, and this is just one of those things. But that, and my wife knows how many operations I've had, but I'm touching 30. And I said, if you told me I had to go through hip, I would go through hip. Right? You are the professional. You know what you're doing. Why? Who am I to not argue it? I said, like, are you sure? Is there no other alternatives? You know what? I questioned every other road, and the percentage play was take that off. And mate, I've been able to run. I've done 2 marathons. You know, I can fucking ride a bike. I've trekked here, tabbed there, done this, done that. So my quality of life is way, way, way better than it ever would be had I've kept the thing. But the big thing that got to me, mate, was the people questioning my integrity and actually punishing me for being what others, you know, like Finn and Jack, they've got, you know, how, I don't know, honourable, brave, whatever you want to call it, I just engrossed myself in it, and there was nothing else going on in the world other than that, and I was going to fucking see that thing to the end. Do you know what I mean? Again, it's sad really that only later now, as in those same people, some of them since came to me asking me for a job in what I recently was doing. And I was like, no, actually, no, you can't have a fucking job. See you later. Do you know what I mean? So everything happens for a reason, doesn't it? And I believe in good karma. So I think the important thing to take from it is I know the truth and my boys know the truth. That's all that really matters.
Well, I find it mental, mate, that you could be missing a leg and people would have that kind of attitude. Did you ever get an apology from any of those people?
One I did, yeah. One.
Yeah. And was that, did that mean something to you at that point?
Huge, because that dude was a role model to me. Like, he didn't necessarily not believe me, so I'll correct myself there. He was going through a bit of a tough time himself with his own shit, and he accused me of using one of his stories as my own, in a couple of triggers for me and what I remember from being blown up and stuff in Bastion. And it wasn't that I took that part of his story specifically. It was that I had a very similar memory, and I just simply hadn't said that part of my memory until he had mentioned it. And I thought, oh, actually, yeah, I do remember that now. In a very different way, but he took it literally as though word for word, you know, verbatim I'd taken it. And I was like, I was in disbelief that he was accusing me of it for one. But mainly, he's not that much older than me, but I see him as either my father figure or an older brother. And I modelled who I was as a soldier on him, because he was a fucking super soldier. And he was one of the guys that got spanked on the same tour, and he's lost both of his legs through the knee. I was recce with him. I did joint operations with him in Afghan. So we were very, very close. So when he said these things to me, that hurt a lot. He has since apologised, and we've sort of kissed and made up, and he explained why he said what he said. And I was like, mate, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Like, just know I would never bullshit. And 2, if I was going to bullshit, I'm not going to use your stories. That's your story to tell, not mine.
And what about the medical officer?
No idea, mate. No idea. I think she probably feels a bit fucking stupid. I would hope that she would feel a bit stupid. I don't know. So a lot of these people have kind of disappeared into the abyss, and most people think they're complete cunts anyway. So it's fine. You think what you want to think. I know what's right, you know.
So, obviously losing your leg must be the end of your army career.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
Yeah, horrendous, mate. I left kicking and screaming. I wanted to stay with the regiment. I wanted to have a job of some description, but long story short, it was no. You're no good. You can't do anything anymore, basically. So take your medical discharge and thin out. So that was September 2018. I went right off the rails after that. For about a year to 18 months, I was just on self-destruct. Drink, gambling, drugs, just completely lost who I was and didn't want to be here anymore. I couldn't deal with what was going on around me. I didn't know what I wanted to do. The marriage at the time had broken down, and for the right reasons, but it was the fact that it was sort of falling apart around me. So I went to self-destruct, tried something real fucking stupid. Fortunately, I woke up, so it didn't pan out, and that kind of gave me a kick up the arse to square myself away. So I was renting a property at the time, and I had to leave there because I'd run up such debts and bills and stuff that I had to go into an IVA. But I inevitably lost that house, so I had to move back in with my mum at the time, my mum and stepdad, which is a real low point. But I had an injury in my hand at the time. I'd fallen on a mug and a cut sort of severed through my hand, and my index and middle finger I'd almost lost. So I'd had two surgeries on that, and that was in the process of healing. So I didn't really have much choice but to be there. And again, like, it was evident that he didn't want me there. So we had a huge falling out, and I had to leave. So Tedworth House, Help for Heroes Recovery Centre, that's now actually closed, but at the time it was open, put me up for a week. But then from there I had to go and declare myself homeless at the council offices, which was an even lower point. They then put me into a travel lodge hotel for 6 weeks with my kids would come and stay with me there in this hotel. I'd have them as much as I possibly could in between, still having like procedures or whatever, you know. Eventually then they got me a 1-bedroom flat on the ground floor in not a very nice area. So what I did was I bleached that motherfucker top to bottom because it was skanky. I then got my mate round to help me build a stud wall in the 1 bedroom because it was quite a big bedroom. I built a stud wall in the middle, and I give my kids a bedroom each. So made the bedrooms what they wanted it to be. And then I slept on the sofa in the front room. That was my bedroom. That was my living area. That was everything in there. Then COVID hit. So I was at the time working at a school, but my children had happened to be with their mum on their weekend there. So I was going round there every day for the hour that we used to get to spend some time outside with them. Every day I did that for about 7 weeks until eventually their mum sort of decided that she had to go back to work. Said to me, "You don't need your job because you have a pension. You take the fucking kids." So I was like, fine, I will. So they came to live with me full time then, which was fucking mega. That was everything I needed. We were then in that flat for a long time. Obviously COVID, this, that and the other. Eventually it sort of started coming back to some sort of normal. And then 2020, I met Abby, who's my now wife. And it's as though everything had been put into place. Like, she was everything that I needed, wanted. You know, you never change things because obviously you may not be here or you may not be who you are, but I wish I'd met her a long time ago, put it that way. So after, 6-7 months of courting, old school, we moved in together, all of us. So she has 2 daughters from the previous marriage. Obviously, I've got a boy and a girl. from previous marriage. And we now have a 2-year-old. She's 2 on Saturday. We have a 2-year-old together. So we are a family of 7. They all live with us full time. They see their mum and dad, the other kids, every other week for a couple of days. But I've got 4 girls and 1 boy, and I do say that they're my girls, her too. And it's as though everything happened for a reason. And kind of that then put me back into a mindset of where I needed to be. And then Afghan fell, if you remember.
No, I remember.
So straight away, I went straight back into that mindset of I need to do something. So my friend Finn, we were going to go and do selection together, and we were going to go and try this, that and the other. And obviously what happened in Afghan happened, so I couldn't do it, but he did go and do it. So he then asked me if I could help him with just a couple of bits with some like map recce stuff and just trying to give me a job and keep me in the fold. You know, just if that's the sort of guy he is, he knows that I'm useful in some way, but also wants to keep my identity alive, right? So I said, yeah, sound. At the time, I was actually having a procedure in hospital. So I was doing it from my hospital bed. And somehow it just escalated so quickly to me doing more, helping more. And then all of a sudden I find myself doing things for other people, other agencies, other departments. And all of a sudden I'm running an intelligence and security firm, right? Contracting to the UK and US, MOD, government, DOD, you fucking name it. We're having meetings with the Taliban. We're delivering intelligence briefs to various special forces groups, various intelligence communities. We've got a full team of people on the ground in Afghanistan. We're moving high-value targets from Afghanistan into Pakistan and other sort of joining countries. Underneath the nose of the Taliban in some cases, and also with the Taliban's blessing. So we happen to create this just kind of immovable force where the Taliban would only deal with us. Members of the Haqqani network would only deal with us. I did a 6-month operation led by the Foreign Office, but they needed to have us on there because I don't know if you remember when the Taliban picked up a load of hostages in Afghanistan. A couple of our boys have been swept up. 2 British and another American. So we did a joint op, Foreign Office and the US, where it was a 6-month thing where we were hostage and detainee negotiations with the Taliban. It was crazy. The shit that was going on. I remember my friend of mine, Ryan, he was working with me on it. I sort of dragged him into it because his people skills. And he was having a conversation with the Taliban, and this guy joked that me and him looked like terrorists because of our beards. Right? This is a fucking member of the Taliban. How does this happen? Yeah, we were going in and out of like Regent's Park Barracks, King Charles Street, just a fully fledged member of that world, that community, to the point where we then started actively working in Ukraine too when Russia invaded. And fast forward, I went into Ukraine 10 days after the invasion, run some recce and took in some humanitarian aid and stuff like that. And again, helped get people out of harm's way that were being hunted down and all the rest of it. Under the radar, you know, all that sort of, I don't know, I suppose picking up from where I left off in Afghanistan, really, when I was actively in Afghanistan, to the point then where the former RSM of 2-2 was in my house, delivering me parts of stuff that you only get for being a member. You know, I'll show you at the top there. You can't, but the video, I've got a coin at the top there, which you'd only get from being a member. It's what I always wanted to go and try. Not to say I would have got in, right? I'm not saying I'm some fucking super soldier, but to try it. And all of a sudden, I'm on the ground in these countries doing a job as I suppose the the book or the movie term would be an officer gathering information, turning that into intelligence, delivering that to the various sort of departments within the MOD and the government, both here and in the US, and then their operations were being planned with that intelligence in mind. You don't get to stand in the places I stood within the barracks and the offices that I did without being a member of that community. And it all happened very, very quickly. And I did that for about 3 years. But long story short, because I can't go into too much detail, we brought a third person in who was Ryan's good friend, and he completely fucked us. Took everything. So overnight, it just all fucking fell apart. Now, once you're in that world, it's very difficult to get out of that world. But also, it's very difficult to add money in that world if you are only a name, right? If you don't have the company behind you, the proof of work behind you, you're not going to be able to bid on contracts, and you're not going to be able to earn money. But you are doing all the work. You're doing the legwork, the very late nights, the traveling here, the traveling there, all for the greater good and all for the cause of trying to help, right? However, I've been there and I've done that, and all I got was fucking hate for the most part. So at that time as well, my wife was pregnant with our fifth. So I made the decision to step away from it entirely. And help every now and then when someone needs me to put them in touch with someone or ask a question or send an email, whatever it might be. But I'm no longer in that world, but it was one of the best chapters I've written so far, doing that.
What was it like for you to meet and talk to members of the Taliban?
Do you know, I kind of managed to switch off from it and what it meant. And it's funny, we asked that question. Finn struggled to understand how I was able to do it based on what had obviously happened while we were over there and what we were doing. And I said, it's bigger than me. It doesn't matter. I don't matter. And actually, I got more respect from them. They used to call me the warrior because I had the leg. The leg was on show. They know where it came from and how it happened. And I was seen as this honourable warrior for being there and looking them in the eye, talking to them. So that's why I managed to get so much done, because they actually had more respect for me than they did other people. Which makes sense.
Are you, in a way, glad to? Is there almost a sense of closure that comes with meeting the enemy?
I think so. And the good that was able to come from what we were doing made it worth it. You know, we moved 430 high-value targets to safety with their families. You know, sometimes illegally, sometimes legally, sometimes with the blessing of the Taliban, sometimes not. We did joint operations with PGHQ, you know, DHU, the British, the military, special forces community, all the cool shit you see in fucking movies and books and stuff. They were there, but they can't do any of those things. They're not allowed. You know, if you start negotiating with these people, you then have to recognize them as a government. So you can't do that. But they can use people like me. You know, I'm deniable. So I almost was back in the fold of, I was working alongside the military. It's just the fact that I didn't have their umbrella over my head, but more importantly, I didn't have the handcuffs on. I was able to go into those muddy waters. It was pretty fucking cool, if I'm honest.
So where's golf come into all this?
Well, after that crazy 3-year period of doing all of that, when it sort of got taken away, my wife just said, "Look, go play golf for a bit, get your head on, figure out what you want to do." And I've kind of always played golf over the last 5 years or so. I've played as just every now and then as a hobby, really. But very quickly it became apparent that there's something I can do with it here with the content side of it, and competing as a professional. So I'm not currently professional. Technically, I could turn pro now based on what my handicap is, but it doesn't make sense to do that at the moment, and I'm not good enough yet. However, I have since signed a club deal with a major US brand. I've picked up sponsors along the way, and I'm now a full-time golfer / content creator, which took a lot to get used to, because for the last 3 years I couldn't be online because it was a huge threat to me and my family if I was. Which really did take some getting used to and figuring out how that sort of looked. But I went down the rabbit hole and, how can I turn this into a career? How can I make money from this? How can I keep this going and make golf my full-time job? I don't earn lots of money from it, mate. It comes from sponsorship and hopefully social media and stuff like that. But the most important thing is I'm able to be I would say a full-time dad. I'm able to spend time with the kids I wouldn't be able to before. I'm able to see first of things with our youngest daughter, because I miss so many firsts and miss so many things with the kids. I give 20 years of my life to the MOD. Even gave parts of myself to the MOD, and then even after that, I was still then hell-bent on operating within the sneaky beaky alley areas that I was, even as an amputee. And there's only so long you can do that before you think you're a fucking idiot. Stop. You're going to get somebody killed because you can't run, you fucking idiot. Do you know what I mean? So it became the natural progression without even realising it.
Rick, thanks so much for your time today, mate. I'll let everyone know where they can find you and stuff if they're not already following you on social media and all that. To finish up, mate, the floor's yours. If you have any pearls of wisdom, anything you want to say, whatever you want to say, as long as it's not going to get the show cancelled, then go ahead.
I suppose. So if you're military or you are looking to work within that sector, one of the best pieces of advice I was ever given was be fluid, because flexible is too rigid. So don't take things too personally. Don't overthink things. Don't worry too much about what someone else might be doing. Focus on what you can do. Control the controllables. And if anybody has a problem with you, fuck them.
Guys, thanks so much for listening today. Rick, thanks for giving up your time, mate. Really enjoyed the chat. You have a mental story, and we really appreciate it, you sharing it with us. I want to shout out Lucas before we go, because Lucas has given a lot of help to the podcast this year. Well, a lot of help to me in editing the podcast and stuff. So, Lucas, big thank you to you. And thank you to you guys for tuning in. Please do share the podcast. Please let people know, reviews, all that kind of stuff. I won't keep going on about it. Well, I will do. I'll just wait until the next episode. But if you could spread the word, really appreciate it. Everything you need to know, guys, is linked down in the show notes. So I'll just leave it here and just say thanks so much. Hope you all have had a very good Christmas period. I hope you all have a great New Year. All the best for New Year, guys. Really appreciate you turning up to this. Gives me a lot of purpose. And that's something that, you can't put a price on, which is why we don't charge for the podcast. So thank you so much. And yes, we'll catch you in the new year.